I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
Dooby-dooby-doo. What's going on? Happy Friday, guys. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you're new, I want to let you know that Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show. And you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and every other Sunday. I want to give a shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, guys. It's Friday. Friday's like my favorite live stream night. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because it's Friday and it's the end of the week. But we have a great show tonight. I'm really excited about it. I want to start off by giving shout outs to people in the chat. What is going on, fam? What's up, Dan? You know that scene from the movie How High where Method Man and Redman make fun of the dean? I do. I'm aware. That's what I hear when Sabs is getting at folks. Get them. That movie is something else, right? You know, the thing that I thought that movie was going to be, focused more on, I guess, them smoking. I thought that's what that movie, the main focus of it was going to be, but it turned out it wasn't really that way, even though they do smoke in the movie. But yeah. TD, yay, the Friday commentary is the only one I can watch live. Well, welcome, TD. David, Sabby, Oprah is a shell for the DNC. Her and Kamala just pandered the billionaires for their stupid campaign of hers. We're going to get into that Oprah town hall because it was a doozy. Max, over 700 early votes cast in the U.S. so far. Wow, it's early. It's still September. Interesting. What's going on? Let's give John Kelly a big whoop whoop for becoming a Sabby member. Welcome, John. Trauma Queen. I was waiting for you to cover that Oprah and Kamala mess. It's interesting. It's a doozy. Shout out to David Turner for becoming a Sabby member. Let's give him a big whoop whoop. Yeah. Strong Flower. Oprah only helps Kamala with the white women's vote. Yeah, we'll get into that. I was going to say something. We'll hold it for the story. Y'all Ain't Ready says, hello, Sabby. Looking forward to another great live. Cenk and Candace Owens. Oh, boy. LOL. Congrats again to JB. Yeah, the Cenk and Candace Owens convo where they're debating an IDF soldier. Oh, my God. That was fire. Can't wait to get to that story. What's up, James Turner? Shout out to James Turner for becoming a Sabby member. Give James a big whoop, whoop. Yeah. What's up, Proper? That rally with Oprah really hurt Kamala. You think so? Oprah looked disappointed. Oprah tried to help her a few times. Wow. This is an interesting race. Kamala is an embarrassing to the highest office. Yeah, don't forget to answer that poll, you guys. What do you think? Do you think with the Oprah rally, and if you haven't seen it yet, you're going to see it tonight. So maybe you might want to wait till answer then till you see at least certain parts of it. But yeah, I don't know. Like I saw it and I feel like there were multiple times where Oprah was trying to help her with answering some of the questions. Like she'd follow up after a question that an audience member asked, trying to help her there. I felt like Lawrence says free Palestine, New York varsity. I couldness on the podcast tonight at 10 p.m. ET. Oh, I think you mean Cloudness Had him in my phone as Be Easy. Had to change up my whole esh. Greetings, CBC voter says, happy Friday, Sabby Sabs. Shout out to Casey. The Oprah and Kamala interview made me think maybe Joe Biden really isn't as incoherent as I remember. Interesting. I saw a video earlier today of Jill Biden leading the first cabinet meeting of the year. So it makes you wonder who's really been running the show around there. Greetings, Ani says, another evening with Sabby. Happy Friday, y'all. Shout out to Phyllis says, hey, Sabs, what's up? Greetings, Mark says, Sabby. Shout out to Miguel says, peace. Greetings, Hannah says, made it in time. Shout out to Eric says, hey, yo, away we go. Greetings, C. Shota or Shota says, hey. Shout out to Bill Bobby says, turn it up. Greetings, Dexter. Oprah helps her garnish more white women. Yeah, I was thinking the same way because, you know, that's typically who Oprah appeals to. Shout out to Roberta says, greetings. Greetings. Ciara says, hello from Ireland. Well, hello then. Greetings. I'm always excited to see international viewers, you know, especially I know you're in a different time zone. Shout out to Casey's in Solidarity and Fire. Greetings, Dr. Grumble says, starting off with the beat. Shout out to Lewis says, peace and happiness to everyone tonight. What up, Sabby? What up, Lewis? Shout out to my comrade JB is in the house says, hello, everyone. Greetings, James Green says, a green heart. Is James from Ireland too? Shout out to Brian Snyder says, Sabby. And of course, shout out to Charles Brewster, sending solidarity, muscle, and 100. Yeah. And yeah, I did lift weights today. So yeah, it's one of those days. One of those days. Don't forget to answer that poll if you've already seen the Oprah town hall. If you haven't seen that town hall, feel free to answer that poll when we get to that story. Do want to get into all of this. And shout out to the Oracle says Kamala is just an awful politician. She cannot read a room, is inauthentic, and too inarticulate otherwise. Well, we're going to get into all of that, ladies and gentlemen. We have interesting stories tonight that I'm pretty excited about. First and foremost, let's go ahead and give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you so much for holding down the fort here. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories over here. Bam. Ultimate Sabinators. We have Sabsters. And we have Sabbies. I always say Sabbies are the meat of the sandwich, right? You got your, if we had an Italian sub, this would be the meat of the sandwich. And of course, the members. The members is one of the pieces of bread. Yeah. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate your support. Yeah. And I hope I'm not making anyone hungry by bringing that up, but you know. All righty. Thank you for the super chat, Courtney. Another fire show, and I'm ready for it. And shout out to Miles for the super sticker. Thank you so much. Yeah. Quite a bit to dive into, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go to that thumbnail. Crazy stories this week. Oh my God. Holy smokes. What are we talking about tonight, ladies and gentlemen? Candace Owens and Cenk Uygur crush IDF soldier. That debate was freaking wild. For whatever reason, it was like 2 different parts of the debate. Like they were there 1 minute and then they went away and then they came back. And I don't know. I think something happened with Cenk's camera or something like that. But we're going to get into that conversation. I'm really surprised Piers Morgan continues to bring that soldier on his show. That guy's a war criminal. And I was hoping that one of them, that Candace or Cenk Uygur, would say that, but they do really they do really grill into him pretty deep. We're also going to discuss Oprah's awkward town hall. I'm telling you, when I watched that town hall, I said to myself, it was almost like Oprah brought energy for Kamala. You know, it's like, and that's another thing, like if you're a candidate, you never want the host to have more energy and appeal than you do. And I feel like Oprah was kind of carrying her through this somewhat, but it is what it is. We're also going to discuss, this is a crazy story. If you haven't heard about it, Mississippi cops plead guilty. There are 6 Mississippi police officers pleading guilty in not just police brutality, but I'm talking about torture. We're going to get into that story. I'm surprised they pled guilty because I do remember when the story broke last year, and I did not think they would plead guilty. So they must have a lot of damning evidence against them. And last but not least, if you live in New York City, you got to let me know what is happening here. Okay. Roger Meadows sent this to me and he was like, you got to cover this story. A lot of people are not talking about this. So hopefully you can get a big scoop of it here. But Eric Adams' corruption, Eric Adams and his entire department here is being exposed, investigated. It is going down in the NYC. Okay. And don't forget, Eric Adams was a former cop. So just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. And we will finish off the California ballot measures for November. We'll finish that off tonight too. And then we'll be moving on to Colorado when I come back on Tuesday. So I hope you guys are excited about the ballot measures. There's some pretty cool ones. I'm not going to lie. We have a pretty cool one on the ballot here for Massachusetts, but I always say, if you don't want to vote for the president and you live in a ballot initiative state, always make sure you show up to vote for those ballot measures because it will affect you directly because you do live in that state, unless you plan on moving or something like that. But definitely go participate in those. It can affect you in a good way or bad way. So just depends on what the measure is. So how about you start us off right by smashing that damn like? Yeah. Thank you. And let's get started with this crazy story. So we're going to start from the beginning because I want you to follow the timeline here. It was almost, I think, about 10 months ago that Eric Adams was being tapped for corruption. So the first time I heard about this was last year, and I covered that story that he was being, they were looking into him and they were saying, oh, there's nothing to come of this. Or he said there was nothing to come of it. I remember that. And what was crazy is before all of this happened, right before it happened, Eric Adams was criticizing the Biden administration. I remember this. He was very vocal and he was not happy that he was not receiving a response from the Biden administration about helping New York City handle the migrant situation. So Eric Adams, for those who are not aware, he's not complaining that there are migrants that have come to New York City. He was complaining that the Biden administration was not giving him the resources that he needed to take care of them. And it just seemed like after he started criticizing the Biden administration publicly, the feds started coming after him. All of a sudden, it was like, let's look into Eric Adams. Let's look into his campaign funds. That's how it started. And then just 2 weeks ago, the feds raided Eric Adams' home. Now, let's take you to that clip here from ABC News. Remember, Mayor of New York City, former NYPD police officer, and the feds have raided his home. We're going to take you through the timeline, folks.
Out of the FBI raid on the homes of top aides to New York Mayor Eric Adams, investigators are also seeking information on city officials, including the police commissioner. Senior investigative correspondent Aaron Katursky has that story. Good morning, Aaron.
And good morning to you, George. Federal investigators are now reaching into the mayor's inner circle, taking aim at some of his top deputies and closest aides. This morning, the mayor of New York insists he and his administration are clean and cooperating.
I'm not aware of any misdoings, and I'm going to, again, follow the rules.
The mayor says he can't fathom why, but sources tell ABC News federal prosecutors and the FBI have opened new investigations focused on City Hall and the NYPD, including many of the administration's senior leaders. Investigators have seized the phones of Police Commissioner Edward Caban and at least a half dozen other top NYPD officials. And in pre-dawn raids, they've searched the homes of 2 deputy mayors and the school's chancellor.
So pretty much his administration, like his cabinet here, right? Like this is his team. We're talking about deputies. We're talking about the NYPD police commissioner, not just Eric Adams, but his whole crew. Are they trying to say that Eric Adams is corrupt? Are they trying to tell us that?
Charges have been filed, and the mayor says his administration has nothing to hide.
We're going to comply with whatever rules, and we're going to follow the law. And we're going to make sure that whatever information is needed, we're going to turn over that information.
For most of his 3 years in office, Adams and his campaign have faced scrutiny over whether they took illegal foreign money. The FBI seized his phones last November. Sources say the new investigations are separate. City Hall says there's no indication the mayor himself is a target of any investigation. Adams was once lauded as the new face of the Democratic Party, but these investigations could threaten his ability to lead the nation's largest city. Michael, as one political opponent put it, how can you clean up the city when your own house is a mess? Michael.
All right, Aaron Katursky.
I love the way he ended that. How can you clean up the city when you can't clean up your own mess? Oh, yeah. Moving on, too. I remember at one point they were even thinking about, oh, well, Eric Adams, should he run for president? And I'm like, are you kidding me? So just think about that. Now, fast forward. And the NYPD police commissioner has resigned. Now, this is after the federal investigation has started. All of a sudden, he's like, I am out of here. And you also have to know that prior to him, he's fairly new. There was another police commissioner. It was a female. She wasn't there long under Eric Adams, and she resigned. She didn't give a reason for resigning. I guess she wanted to, protect her career. So she didn't give any complaints about working for Eric Adams or anything like that. She just resigned, and people were saying, why did this just come out of the blue? And so there was another NYPD commissioner who was, I remember the story, they said he was the first Hispanic to be appointed to NYPD police commissioner. So I remember when they came out with that story. So dude hasn't even been there long, and now he is ready to go. Listen to this.
We are following breaking news. The commissioner of the New York City Police Department has resigned today amid a federal investigation. NBC News has obtained Edward Caban's resignation letter, which was sent to to members of the police department earlier today. Caban took over the department in July 2023 after being tapped by Mayor Eric Adams, whose administration is the target of multiple investigations right now. NBC News law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter has been tracking this story really from the very beginning. Tom, this is all tied to the possibility of corruption in New York City.
That's exactly right, Kate. And for people in other parts of the country, you might be saying, well, why do we care what's going on at the top of the NYPD? But the NYPD is the largest police department in the country and in the world. And given their reach in the counterterrorism and intelligence fields, it's likely that your local police department at some point, or at least your state, has received a benefit as a result of NYPD investigations. So when the commissioner steps down, and as you just said, it's tied to the possibility, what federal investigators are looking into, whether or not the police commissioner was aware of or had knowledge or directed a scheme that may have involved his brother, his twin brother, James, in the question of whether or not James was receiving payment from nightclubs and bars in exchange for helping out with the police department and basically getting special treatment from local precincts. And that's generally where this investigation centers around. We should note nobody's been charged here. Mm-hmm. Nobody's been accused by federal prosecutors of any wrongdoing. But this started last week when Caban's phone was seized by federal investigators. This became a huge distraction. He didn't even attend the 9/11 memorial ceremonies yesterday. Yeah. And I think it came to a point today where he said, look, it's time for me to step down and try to remove this distraction.
And he's not.
And I just want to interrupt here and just say something as well. Like when it gets to the point where they're seizing your phones, they're looking for they're looking for data. I don't know if they're looking at pictures, phone numbers that you may have in their text messages that you may have on your phone. They're looking for data. So I know it's probably no surprise to everyone to say, you know, the NYPD is corrupt. No surprise, they are. But I had serious reservations about Eric Adams when he was running for mayor. I was like, I can't believe the people of New York City are thinking about electing a former cop He was one of the ones that wanted to bring back stop and frisk, by the way. Insane, crazy. But that's who they voted for. And from what I understand, talking to people that live there, he doesn't seem to be a favorable mayor. And I don't know how people would compare him to Mayor Giuliani, because Mayor Giuliani was also corrupt. The corruption just runs deep.
Admitting any wrongdoing in his statement that he
That's
released. Right. Okay. Tom Winter, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, buddy. It's all, they're coming after everybody in New York. And I want to show you more recent information. This was posted yesterday. We're going to get into a little bit more details. The unraveling of Eric Adams' administration. Oh, man, is bad. Eric, you have had brighter days. I've seen better days. I've seen better days. We're going to get into this part here. Just last week, NYPD Commissioner Eric Cabin stepped down a week after federal authorities seized his cell phone in an ongoing investigation. Days later, Lisa Zornberg, the chief counsel and legal advisor to the mayor, also submitted her resignation. That was followed by the resignation of Kristen Kaufman, the deputy commissioner of public-private partnerships and economic development, this week. In recent press conferences, Adams sought to take focus off of his administration. He said he's focusing on protecting the people of the city. Well, Eric Adams is Batman? Okay. He said the investigations will take care of themselves. And that is not where my time is going to be consumed of answering the same questions over and over again. We know what you know. What a dodger. It goes on to say, so when did Adams' problems begin? According to Gothamist and WNYC reporter Elizabeth Kim, it was sometime late last year. This goes back to November when federal agents raided several individuals, mostly notably Adams' top fundraisers. So this is going back to campaign funds. She added that it wasn't unusual for there to be investigations into a mayor's fundraising and that there was one for the previous mayor, Mayor Bill de Blasio. But what was unusual and really raised people's eyebrows was when federal agents also seized the mayor's phones. That's when the political observers started thinking that this is rather serious because that was pretty much unprecedented in New York. So what exactly is Adams being investigated for? Kim says the first thing to keep in mind is that these are ongoing probes. As a rule, federal prosecutors do not speak publicly about the investigations. We do know that part of the focus has been on illegal donations from Turkish officials. Then there's another investigation into one of Mayor Adams' fundraisers who really focuses on the Chinese community. And with that, that's really all we know. We know that her home was also searched. There is also an investigation into the NYPD. Surprise, surprise. That one has also involved the police commissioner's brother. He happens to be a consultant in the nightlife industry, and there has been some reporting that it could involve bribery involving even a member of the mayor's administration. He recently let go of someone who was in charge of nightlife operations. Then there's the investigation into the deputy mayor for public safety. Now, before I get to that, I want you to hear something pretty interesting. When we talk about the nightlife operations, you know, it is not uncommon for certain mayors in certain cities to look out for certain establishments when it comes to nightlife. And I'll give you an example. When I lived in New York, this is when Mayor Giuliani was, there. And I remember there was a guy, he was a bouncer at a club. And he was upset. It was a random conversation. He was upset and he said that he thought that because Giuliani was one of him, he said he was supposed to look out for establishments like mine. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, well, he was like, we put an Italian in the mayor's office and who does he screw over? He screws over the Italian nightclubs. And I was like, oh, so you wanted him to do you a favor. It's a mess. It goes on to say, this is a person whose name is Phil Banks. His relationship with the mayor stretches back decades. He happens to be the brother of the school's chancellor. Now, there has been a focus on yet another member of the family, a brother who works as a consultant and has represented businesses who have contracts with the city. Adams' response and the next step. According to Kim, the mayor has aimed to downplay these investigations from the start. He wouldn't even call it an investigation. He would refer to them as reviews. Wait a second. Okay, guys, if the feds ever come to your house, you just tell them, oh, do you want to do a review? Oh, my God. He would remind the Republic that he, as a former police officer, was a member of law enforcement and that he's always followed the rules. Sure he has, is what he says, and that he has always told his staff to follow the rules. But she explains that in recent weeks, beginning with the departure of the police commissioner, the mayor has been forced to address this shift and acknowledge the concerns that New Yorkers have. So the mayor, who had the Rona last week, had a virtual address both to announce the resignation of the police commissioner, but also to try to reassure New Yorkers that he was not distracted by these investigations and that he was going to let them play out and that he was confident that it would come out that he had done nothing wrong. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just, it doesn't look too good for Eric and friends. Doesn't look too good for Eric Adams and friends. And again, I have to say, I've said this before. I just find it to be kind of strange that he was targeted after he publicly criticized the Biden administration multiple times about not helping them with resources for the migrant community in New York. So I don't know. It could just be a coincidence, but you know how it is sometimes with these politicians and you're a part of their party. When you're singing their praises, they're there to help you. But the moment you criticize them, they shut the door. And sometimes they'll send the feds after you. Oh, my God. Crazy stuff. We're going to continue to follow that story because I do feel like that story in particular has kind of slipped under the radar. Like when I looked for that story after Roger sent me the article, I didn't see a lot of people covering that story. So we'll just make sure we continue to follow it. Yeah. Let's go to the comments here. Dun, 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 dun. Thank you, Miles Matthews, for the super sticker. Thank you, P. Smith. Olivia Nuzzy. I heard. I thought about covering that story and I was like, I don't want to get into affairs again. Because when I covered the Nikki Haley affairs, like that was a doozy. That was too much for my brain. Yeah, P. Smith, Olivia Nuzzy suspended for affair with RFK Jr. I heard. Oh, man. Could you imagine if RFK Jr. was still fully in the race right now? What a doozy. Natalie, Adams is pushing hard for Zio so he can take what he gets. I have no sympathy for him. Thank you, greatly blessed. Same guy who praised the NYPD for showing great restraint in the subway fare evader shooting. It's that Cop City IOF training in action. That's right. And let's remember, he's the one that sicked, police in riot gear against those kids that had the encampments at Columbia. Totally uncalled for. Thank you, Christian. Diddy and Adams' future bunkmates. LMAO. Man. Thank you, Britsman. I love Sabby Sabs, sassy finger taps, and mm-hms. Yeah, that's just me being me. Thank you, Dwayne. Eric Adams, Batman. He ain't even black, man. He's blue. Boo. Oh, Eric, you're getting no love over here, hon. No love over here. We're going to our next story, and this one is wild. Wild. So apparently last year in Mississippi, there were two black men that they came forward with their story that they were, I guess, in my mind, possibly held hostage and also tortured by police officers, Mississippi police officers. And these police officers were indicted. Now, I never expected them to plead guilty. A lot of times police officers don't, especially they have the police union, so they do have that backing. But it appears that now they have pled guilty. And I want to start off with this video here when those deputies were first fired after alleged torture. You guys have got to hear this. This story is crazy.
Deputies involved with this incident were placed on administrative leave pending final investigative findings. Due to recent developments, including findings during our internal investigation, those deputies that were still employed by this department have all been terminated.
Rankin County Sheriff Brian Bailey reading off a prepared statement regarding the deputies involved in the January incident where Michael Corey Jenkins and Eddie Parker say they were tortured, tased, and beaten. However, the sheriff didn't offer much else after that.
We cannot, however, confirm or deny any specific facts related to this incident because of active and ongoing investigations.
Malik Shabazz, who's the attorney representing the two men, responding to these latest developments, saying, quote, Sheriff Brian Bailey has finally acted after supporting much of the bloodshed that has occurred under his reign in Rankin County. The next credible and honorable step for Brian Bailey is to resign or to be ousted.
Now, what I want to point out in this statement here is that he says supporting much of the bloodshed that has occurred under his reign in Rankin County. That right there lets me know that this was a pattern of behavior. I don't believe this incident that happened with these two gentlemen was a one-off. I mean, you don't get comfortable going to those type of extremes unless you've done this before. And so I would not be surprised if they have done this to other men in Mississippi.
In quote, everything dating back to January 24th. That's when deputies were called out to 135 Connerly Road in Braxton after reports of narcotic activity. While responding, Shabazz says the deputies shot Jenkins in the face. Body cameras were not activated during this entire incident. In February, the Department of Justice opened an investigation into possible civil rights violations by the Rankin County Sheriff's Department. On June 12th, a civil rights lawsuit was filed against the deputies involved at the Sheriff's Department, seeking $400 million in compensatory and punitive damages. Then, more than a week later, on June 23rd, deputies involved in the incident were fired from the department. While Shabazz is happy to hear that the deputies have been fired, he says he still thinks they should face a stiffer punishment, saying,
let me pause here. I just want you to see how long it takes for these events to pass, right? January was the response. June, civil rights lawsuit. That was June 12th. Make sure I'm going in the right way. Excuse me. January, February, the Department of Justice opened the investigation. June 12th, civil rights lawsuit was filed against the deputies. And then June 23rd, deputies involved in the incident were fired from the department. So the complaint was made in January, but they weren't fired until June 23rd, which also makes me wonder if any other incidents happened with those officers between that time before they were fired from the department. So it just goes to show you how long it can take to get, a serious response here.
Quote, however, criminal indictments of the deputies from the Attorney General of the state of Mississippi and criminal indictments by the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice is the next step in this tough fight for justice in this nasty ordeal, end quote.
Okay, so again, crazy story. You haven't even heard the thick of it yet. But one of the things I noticed, I don't know if everyone caught this, he said that their body cameras were turned off. And this is another thing that I point to when people say, well, body cameras are a part of police reform. Body cameras are not preventing these officers from, brutalizing people. I think it's very clear to say that now. And I really wonder how long these guys have gotten away with this behavior. And I also wonder if there are other police officers at that department that are part of this so-called goon squad or whatever that have also treated people like this and have not been reprimanded. So we will find out at some point, because from what I read earlier today, it appears the DOJ is doing a deeper investigation into the entire police department in Rankin County. And it's not just about those 6 officers anymore. Now, surprisingly, those officers did plead guilty. Now, this is the thing that kind of threw me off, because usually they don't. Usually they'll say, oh, no, they were resisting arrest. And because they're backed by the police union, they can a lot of times get away with that. Not in this case. So that tells me that they have damning evidence against these 6 officers if they're pleading guilty. So the guilty plea came through the other day. Listen to this.
In Mississippi, 6 former law enforcement officers have pleaded guilty to federal charges after investigators say the white officers tortured 2 black men for hours, then tried to cover up the crime. Miguel Almaguer now with what the victims are telling us tonight.
Tonight, Eddie Parker and Michael Jenkins say justice can be served now that the 6 white Mississippi law enforcement officers who beat them for nearly 2 hours have entered guilty pleas.
I finally gave up. I knew how it was to give up. It wasn't a surviving. It was a hoping I'll make it to the end.
Prosecutors in Mississippi say the officers tortured, used racial slurs, and sexually assaulted the 2 black men.
Everybody see this? Tortured, used racial slurs, and sexually assaulted them. So here's the thing, folks. When I talk about the criminal justice system, we talk about policing in this country. It doesn't matter if the president is a Democrat or Republican, because I can guarantee you this. If this was happening under Trump's administration, the Democratic Party would be raising hell, all hell right now. Everybody would be like, we're not going back. Let's get him out of here. We're not going back. We're not going to. But you see, it's tricky when it comes to policing because both parties support policing. Both parties support a militarized police state. You have Democrats that are forming cop cities around the country, in Democrat cities, and Democrat mayors and Democrat city councilors approving it and signing off on it. And at the same time, you have Republican politicians that are willing to continue to give the police department more money. Joe Biden gave the police more and more money. Remember what he said during his, State of the Union address? We need to fund the police, give them more and more money. Kamala Harris wants to give the police more money. Donald Trump gave the police more money. So this is another case where I say, both parties are similar because both parties want to give the police more money. Both parties want a militarized police presence. And everyone has to remember that. And it's not even just about arresting someone. It's also about protest. Look at the militarized police that arrive at even peaceful protests nowadays. You have officers that the people are supposed to be able to trust. They're supposed to be able to call them if they need help. These 6 police officers in Mississippi decided to form their own squad within the police department and violate people. Now, see, I remember telling people a while back that there were stories of police officers sexually assaulting people, and people were like, no, cops aren't doing that. And these were men. So it doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man. They sexually assaulted 2 men. 90 minutes, tortured, beat, used racial slurs, and sexually assaulted them. These guys will have to live with that trauma for the rest of their life. That's not something you just easily get over. Now, are they cops or are they a gang?
Inside a Braxton home last January, court documents reveal the officers, who called themselves the Goon Squad, broke down the door, beat, tased, and threatened to rape Parker and Jenkins while calling them the N-word and monkeys as they accused the men of sleeping with white women.
They come in there and do what they wanted to do, which torture us, and they came to do what they did.
The 5 Rankin County Sheriff's deputies, Brett McAplin, Jeffrey Middleton, Christian Dedman, Hunter Elward, and Daniel Opdyke, were joined by Richland police officer Joshua Hartfield. The federal complaint says one officer put a gun in Jenkins' mouth, pulled the trigger, and nearly killed him.
You hear that? All of this, of course, not in compliance. And you can't tell me, and they're going to find out when they have the bigger investigation of the full department, because you can't tell me this is the first time they've done something like this.
What did I do? Are these, really officers? Do they do this? Why are they doing it to me?
Authorities say the officers tried to cover up their crime by planting a gun in the home and drugs on the victims after their so-called raid. The officers charged with several crimes, including civil rights violations and obstruction of justice.
Planting weapons on the victims. Now, again, I remember telling people, my family's from Baltimore, Maryland. I remember telling people on this show that Baltimore cops were planting drugs and planting weapons on people. It happens. Someone once asked me, they're like, have you ever seen that show called The Wire? And I'm like, yes, I have. And they're like, is Baltimore actually like that? And I'm like, yes. The cops are corrupt. Anything for a bust. Anything for a bust. And, they have different quotas that they're supposed to meet. Known to just harass people. Will says, I'm from Baltimore, can confirm. Yeah. Abso-freaking-lutely.
In their minds, the law and the Constitution be damned. They became the criminals they swore to protect us from.
After their guilty plea to federal charges, the members of the so-called Goon Squad still face state charges and years behind bars.
So we have a little bit more detail here in this Guardian article that I want to pull up, because this is like crazy. And by the way, this should be all over national news at this point in time. And people are walking around talking about a campaign of joy. People are walking around talking about, yeah, we need to get this person or whatever. And like, I'm sorry, but like this particular issue, if I were a presidential candidate right now, one thing I would not do is talk about funding the police and giving the police more money, right? So listen to this. The U.S. opens a civil rights investigation into the Mississippi Sheriff's Office after torture of Black men. So this is now a much bigger issue. The Justice Department will investigate whether Rankin County Sheriff's Department has engaged in a pattern of practice of excessive force and unlawful stops, searches, and arrests, and whether it has used racially discriminatory policing practices, according to the Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark. So we know the story here, but it says that 5 of those deputies pleaded guilty in 2023 to breaking into a home without a warrant and engaging in an hour-long attack on Michael Corey Jenkins and Eddie Terrell Parker. A 6th officer from the Richland Police Department was also convicted in the attack. So that officer from a different department. Some of the officers were part of a group so willing to use excessive force, they called themselves the Goon Squad. All 6 were sentenced in March, receiving terms of 10 to 40 years. The charges followed an Associated Press investigation in March 2023 that linked some of the officers to at least 4 violent encounters since 2019 that left 2 Black men dead. So does everybody understand now why I am not pro-police? Because I can tell you from my experience, police coming into Black communities has never been a good thing. Never been a good thing. And I've only been stopped by police one time. I remember this. I was stopped by police. I was on my way home from Outback. That's when I was working at Outback Steakhouse. And I was driving home and, I still had on my uniform. So And anyway, he stopped me because apparently I had a headlight that was out. And I couldn't tell that because in the car that I had at that time, there were also fog lights underneath the headlights. So I used to drive a Pontiac Grand Am. Do you guys remember Pontiacs? I used to drive a Pontiac Grand Am. I'm not even sure if they make those anymore, but they were notorious for having fog lights underneath your headlights. So because my fog lights were on, I didn't realize that one of the headlights was out. So dude, stopped me, pulled me over or whatever. And, I just got lucky that I had a police officer that didn't ask a lot of questions and was just like chill or whatever. And he was just like, do you know your headlights out? And I was like, no, I can see the road just fine. And he said, those are your fog lights. And I was like, oh, I said, well, I was on my way home. He said, okay, well, just go ahead and go home, but be careful. So I was lucky. That's not everyone's experience. And then, I'm also female. So then I asked myself, I was like, what if I was a black male? Could have been a different experience. Never know. The attacks on Jenkins and Parker began January 24th with a racist call for extrajudicial violence, according to federal prosecutors. A white person phoned Brett McAlpin, the sheriff's deputy, and complained that 2 black men were staying with a white woman at a house in Braxton. So does everybody see what's happening here? This was the complaint. So I've never been to Mississippi. I've heard some stories, but do you guys know, even in 2024, there's still sundown towns. There's still certain towns where it's not okay for black people to be around, driving around at night. Why would you call the police and tell them that? I know. The World's on Fire said, what year are we living in? I know, right? Crazy stuff. Once inside the home, the officers handcuffed Jenkins and Parker and poured milk, alcohol, and chocolate syrup over their faces while mocking them with racial slurs. So the officers used, one of the tactics is humiliation. They tried to humiliate them. They forced them to strip naked and shower together to conceal the mess. Okay. They mocked the victims with racial slurs and assaulted them with sex objects. So emasculating them. So you have police officers that here were not only racist, but were also rapists. And these are the people that are supposed to stop crime. How can you have people stop crime that are doing crime? In addition to McAlpin, the others convicted were the former deputies Christian Dedman, Hunter Elward, Jeffrey Middleton, Daniel Updike, and the former Richland police officer Joshua Hartfield. The depravity of these crimes committed by these defendants cannot be overstated. That's coming from U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland. So, and here's the picture of them here, you guys. It's them sitting right there in court. That's them right there. Now, let me ask you guys a question. When you hear people say, why should I worry about what's happening in Gaza? Why should I care about the IDF? I live here in America. Who taught them these tactics? Who trains our police? The IDF. When people talk about feeling safe in this country and people say that, well, we have to stop crime, we have to prevent crime because otherwise people won't feel safe. There are some of us that don't feel safe in certain parts, certain neighborhoods, certain towns in this country, not because of crime, but because of the people who are supposed to stop the crime. It happened to those 2 men. It could have happened to you. And you can't tell me they're the only ones. You can't tell me they're the only police officers in this department doing this stuff. People known about this. But they back each other and they cover each other. People have been knowing about this. When I talk about defunding the police and people say, what will we do if we don't have police? What do we do with them? Tell me, let me know. What do we do with them? Because according to the data, police only solve 0.02% of crime. Now, people say, now, what would you put in place instead? You would move towards a form of police abolition, and you would move towards a system where a community would be able to help some of these things. Now, let me give you an example. Traffic stops, I don't think should be done by cops. Somebody else can stop cars. It's just reality. You don't really need a cop to stop you and give you a ticket. That's one of them. Mental health episodes should not be done by police officers. You have social workers that are trained to deal with those cases. Police officers are not. They didn't go to school for that. But this within itself, to go into someone's home, and this is the thing I want you guys to really understand. They not only invaded their sense of privacy, they not only disrespected their bodies, they humiliated them. Of course, they were racist, but they invaded their home. So how do those guys continue to feel safe in their home? You know, they tell you the police are supposed to protect you from the people that will break into your home. But what if the people breaking into your home are the police and they're the ones doing the crime? How can you call the police on the police? Something to think about. Let's go to some of the comments here. Yeah. Thank you, Cheetah. The torture, racial slurs, and sexual assault sound familiar, isn't it? Oh, yeah. They were trained by the IOF. There you go. There you go. Thank you, Jasmine. Stuff like this feels like a chapter in our history. Progress means nothing when corruption this deep isn't uprooted. 100%. I agree with you. 100%. Tim says most of these cops still feel like it's 1785 and it's slave patrols. This is what they teach. We have to do better. Got to do better. And remember, as long as you're giving them money, our taxes pay for it. All right. Let's move on to something a little bit different. So Oprah Winfrey and Kamala Harris had a town hall. And there were a lot of people in attendance. I guess you could attend, like some people attended virtually, and then there were people that were physically present at the town hall. And Oprah was, you know, being Oprah. And what was interesting to me about this town hall is that it occurred in Michigan, in Detroit, which is where Kamala is really trying to lock down votes. She's really trying to make sure she can win Michigan. That is going to be a tough state for her, regardless of what the polls are showing you, because the polls that you see in the swing states with Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump, they're not showing you the third party factor. And I've already shown you those numbers. Right now, Muslim American voters in Michigan, the majority is going to Jill Stein. Kamala Harris is in the teens with Muslim voters in Michigan. So just keep that in mind. So this is a state that they've already said she must win. So it was kind of weird to me that like during this town hall, they had all these celebrities there. And most of them were there virtually, but it was just kind of weird. And that was the way the town hall started. You know, like they had people there like Ben Stiller. And I want to show you what he said. Like they just started it off with celebrities. That was weird to me because I feel like, what does that have to do with Detroit? What does that have to do with the needs of people that live in a city that has closed over 40 schools over the past years? A city that has lost jobs in manufacturing. A city that is considered to be or have one of the highest crime rates. Like why? What does Ben Stiller have to do with this? Listen to what he said.
Though, because everybody was so energized, and I mean, I got to go to the convention and see her speech, which was just incredible, and feeling that energy, feeling kind of going from a stop Trump mode into a go Kamala mode. People starting to, really hear what she's about. And, I have a 22-year-old daughter, 19-year-old son is going to be voting in his first election. My daughter's, her reproductive rights are incredibly important. Standing up for.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben. And I think
standing up for,
I think.
So that's Ben Stiller there. And I want to mention something that he said there about moving towards joy, not pushing against something, but moving towards something, moving towards joy. Hold on to that, right? Hold on to that and hold on to the reproductive rights, because that seemed to be a big focus of the town hall. The message that they were trying to send to people is that we're tired of the hatred. We're tired of, the name calling. We want to move towards joy. And then also there's a big discussion about reproductive rights. And it wasn't just Ben. It was also Chris Rock, I believe. Let me make sure I have the right one here, because I could remember how I did that. Yeah. Chris Rock. He's going to say something a little bit similar. So I want you to see the theme that they tried to paint during this town hall.
I've always been a fan of Kamala, even back when she was running for. I remember writing her a check when she was like the district attorney for something. Maybe it was to get out of a parking ticket or something. But I've been writing her checks for a long time, and I just want to bring my daughters to the White House to meet this Black woman president.
That's a reason.
So you see, what does that have to do with Detroit? Right. So again, remember where they are. They are in Detroit, Michigan, and they should be speaking to the needs of not just, people in Detroit, but that is where they are. But they should be speaking towards serious things. And Chris Rock just wants Kamala to be there because he wants to bring his daughters to the White House to meet a Black woman president. So for Chris Rock, it's about identity politics. For Ben Stiller, it's about joy and moving away from hatred, although he did say reproductive rights. And then there's this part here from Chris Rock.
That's a reason.
That's the reason. I think she would make a great president. And I'm ready to turn the page, man.
Yeah.
All the hate, the negativity, it's got to stop.
Yeah, we're so sick of the negativity. Thank you so much, Chris, for being up this.
Okay, so that was Chris Rock, right? I'm not going to show you all the celebrities, but J-Lo was there. Tracy Ellis Ross was there. There were a number of celebrities that were present at the event. But one thing that was very clear to me is that it sounded like to me that people weren't as concerned about what Kamala is going to do for them, although we'll get into a couple of things that are brought up. They were more concerned about moving towards a place of positivity, moving away from negativity and identity. That's what it seemed like. People were just willing to accept the fact that she may not have a plan. They just want to move away from the hatred. And to that, I will say this, and everybody needs to hear this. We'll get to some of the other clips as well. I think what Donald Trump is doing this time around in 2024, trying to reiterate some of the messages that he had in 2016. And that's not going to work this time around, because I saw a video on Twitter of, he was at a rally and he was talking about describing Palestinian people in Gaza as like this infestation. Not different from what he has said in 2016 when he was running for president. And I think what the Trump campaign, where they're failing on this, and don't get me wrong, it's still a tight race. is that they're trying to run on that same rhetoric that they had in 2016. And it does not feel like a lot of people are going for that this time around. So that is something that I think people really need to pay attention to. Like I said, I watched the town hall and it seemed like to me, people just wanted to focus more on positivity. People have told me to my face, like, well, I don't know if Kamala is really going to do anything different, but I don't care. I just want to get away from the negativity. People have told me that to my face. Whereas someone like me, I want a candidate that's going to implement change. Like, I want change. And it seems like so many people are upset with the previous Trump presidency, and the big issue that keeps coming up is the overturn of Roe v. Wade, that they are willing to look past the fact that a Kamala Harris presidency may not implement any change. They just don't want that, the hateful rhetoric. They want something that's positive. Now, I hate to break it to them, because I think we're going to see, if Kamala wins, I think they're going to see that other side of Kamala that some of us have seen. Because I think Kamala may have to be even more, or feel she might have to be even harsher, a little bit more forward, a little bit more assertive and aggressive than Joe Biden. And I feel she probably thinks she's going to have to do that for people to take her seriously. So I sincerely hope people don't think that just because she's a female that she's going to be nicer. Okay, because I don't know about you guys. How many of you have ever had a female boss? How many of you have ever, like, you had a male boss and he might have been kind of strict or annoying or whatever, and then you had your first female boss and you were like, this is going to be so much better because I have a female boss, and then you realize, damn, my boss is a bitch. How many of you ever had that? I've had that. So I hope people don't assume that just because she's a female that she's going to be nicer, because I don't think that's what, remember, she was a prosecutor. So there's that. Now it's funny, they were entertaining celebrities. Meanwhile, Jill Stein had this event today, a conversation with the Black Panther Party, past and present, in Seattle, Washington. So while Kamala Harris is at this town hall and there's all these different celebrities, streaming in virtually, et cetera, and like, we want joy and yada, yada, and I want a woman president. Jill Stein and Shama Sawant, because Shama Sawant was there meeting with the Boeing employees on strike, they're sitting down with the Black Panther Party in Seattle, Washington. They're talking to the people in the community, which is how it should be. And that's what I thought. As soon as I saw that Oprah was hosting this, I said to myself, this is going to turn into like this celebrity thing, which is not what it should have been, especially that they're in Detroit. You're in Detroit. So where are we now? Gretchen Whitmer came to the town hall, and I want you to hear the warning that she gave to people about Michigan. I'm telling you guys, Kamala does not have it in the bag. I know they keep showing you the polls on CNN and MSNBC, and they're saying, look, she's ahead of Trump in Michigan now. She's ahead of Trump in Pennsylvania, yada, yada. She does not have it in the bag. That's why they're coming after the third party candidates, because they know they've seen the numbers with the Muslim voters. So listen to what Gretchen Whitmer says. She gives a warning to people about Michigan.
Isn't that a notion? And what can Michigan do to help get Kamala Harris to the White House?
I think we've got to do the hard work. In 2016, we were short 11,000 votes. That's 2 votes per precinct, which tells you that a conversation you have with a loved one or a neighbor or a fellow parishioner, whomever in your life you can talk to, we've got to do it. Do something, as Michelle Obama said at the convention.
Well, this is what we're doing tonight. We're doing something. Thank you for allowing us in your state. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So did you hear what Gretchen Whitmer said? She said it's tough. It's still going to be tough in Michigan. And she knows that. So last time, 11,000 votes. Could be more this time around that they lose by. And in comes Kamala Harris. This question here about the border. So they did allow some of the audience members to stand up and ask a question. So this gentleman here is going to ask her, what is her plan for the border? Again, I just want to tell you, the question is, what is your plan for the border? Here's her response.
For you is when you become president, what would be your specific steps? Yeah, of course. What would be specific steps to strengthening the border?
So it's a wonderful and important question. My background was as a prosecutor, and I was also the elected attorney general for 2 terms of a border state. So this is not a theoretical issue for me. This is something I've actually worked on. Okay. I have prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. I take very seriously the importance of having a secure border and ensuring the safety of the American people. Sadly, where we are now can be traced most recently back to the fact that when the United States Congress, members of the Congress, including some of the most conservative Republicans, came up with a border security bill. And here's what that border security bill would have done. It would have put 1,500 more border agents at the border. Let me tell you, those border agents are working around the clock. It would have just been about giving them some support and relief, which is probably why the border agents actually endorsed the bill. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl. And I'm looking at people from all over the country here, so I don't need to tell the folks who are watching this what fentanyl has done to families, to kids in our country, and the need to take seriously stemming the flow coming into our country and address.
So again, the question was, what is your plan to fix the border? We all know that drugs are coming in through the border. We all know that, Kamala. We all know about, because you've said this so many times, about the bill that failed because Donald Trump called the Republicans and told them not to pass it. Now, from what I understand also, there were other things that were part of that bill that people didn't agree with. But the reality is, Kamala Harris was assigned to the border the moment that Joe Biden and Kamala stepped into the White House in 2021. That was her assignment. Why did she wait until this bill was introduced, which was what, just a couple months ago? Why did she wait till this bill was introduced just a couple of months ago to try to get something accomplished with the border? I still remember the interview with Lester Holt. I still remember Lester Holt asking her, like, have you been to the border? And Lester Holt's probably one of the more calmer, nicer, commentators. I don't think he's as harsh or mean with people. Some can be. And she said, well, no, I haven't been to the border. So why did it take, though, all those years going by until that bill was introduced in Congress for you to try to do something with the border when you were assigned to the border in 2021? See, Kamala, some of us don't have short memories. Like we remember. I remember.
That extraordinary and tragic issue in terms of its effect. The bill would have allowed us to have more resources to prosecute transnational criminal organizations. And it would have been part of the solution. And Donald Trump called up those folks and said, don't put that bill on the floor for a vote. He blocked the bill, and you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And he has put his personal political security before border security. Because understand, even in the intervening months, what that bill would have done to give support to folks who care about this issue. And this again gets to the point about what does leadership really look like? And is it about you or is it about the people? Right. Is it about running on problems or fixing problems? My work and my career has always been about saying, let's fix problems. Let's address the needs, because we know it's within our capacity to do that.
So to answer,
so this is where Oprah tries to help her out, which she does this quite a bit throughout the town hall. But again, the question was, What is your plan to fix the border? So just keep that in mind. She has yet to answer the question. So Oprah's trying to help her.
Block the bill, and you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And he has put his personal political security before border security. Because understand, even in the intervening months, what that bill would have done to give support to folks who care about this issue. And this again gets to the point about what does leadership really look like? And is it about you or is it about the people? Right. Is it about running on problems or fixing problems? My work and my career has always been about saying, let's fix problems. Let's address the needs because we know it's within our capacity to do that.
So to answer Justin's question, now that that bill has gone and hasn't passed, will you reintroduce that?
Absolutely. And when I am elected president of the United States, I will make sure that bill gets to my desk and I will sign it into law.
So that's not true. Okay. So these are the things that it bugs me when politicians do this. You can't say you're going to make sure that bill gets to your desk. You can't determine that. It has to pass in the House first, and then it has to pass in the Senate. But it's not up to you to make sure it's going to pass in the House, especially if Democrats do not have control of the House again this November. Right now, it's a Republican-controlled House. Yes? So this is another example of politicians making promises that they know they can't fulfill. So I hope everybody wrote this down. I don't know if you're taking notes, but if you are, write this down. Kamala Harris just said her plan to fix the border is to reintroduce that border bill into Congress again. That's her plan. That's it. No plan B if it doesn't pass. Or let's say it passes in the House, but it doesn't pass in the Senate. This is a common thing, right? We've seen happen over and over again. It passes in the House, but it does not pass in the Senate. That's the plan. So long story short, her plan is to rely on Congress and the Senate. Everybody gets that? Okay. Let's go to economy. Let's go to economy. Cost of living. Shout out to Simon Ataba. I like Simon. Simon Ataba said, did she really answer the question? Harris is asked how she plans to tackle the rising cost of living Americans struggle with inflation. But her lengthy response left me more confused than informed. This is a recurring problem Kamala has.
The business,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
You know where I'm going.
That's right. And it's still on paper with the $5,000.
It just hasn't happened, right? Part of to speak to you guys and your family.
A majority of young Americans, 18 to 34, say that the cost of living is their top issue ahead of the election. Let's take a look.
Groceries are extremely expensive right now.
I don't understand how people are affording life right now.
For so many Americans, the high cost of living is their top concern this election.
Rich, we have $435 to last us till the end of the month. Okay?
What?
In Philadelphia, Rachel and Garrett say they have to watch every penny.
When I think of middle class, I think about people who are able to just get up and go and do things within their means and like not extravagant things, but be able to get up and go to dinner.
I covered Rachel and Garrett. I covered this story. I remember this. They had just had the baby.
Whatever they want, or maybe take that trip, that long weekend trip. We don't have that luxury.
By a long shot, her tax plan is phenomenal. No glaze.
Kamala Harris just delivered her new economic plan, and boy, oh boy, is it good for small business owners.
Holy shit, you guys. Kamala Harris is going to announce tomorrow a $25,000 tax credit for first-time home buyers.
Hold on to that. Everybody heard that? $25,000 tax credit. Let's take notes, guys. Tax credit, because that language is going to change later on.
I'm elected president, I will make it a top priority to bring down costs and increase economic security for all Americans.
Well, Rachel and Garrett are joining us on Zoom from Pennsylvania, and I understand your sister and brother-in-law moved in, and you're hoping to save money to have a second child?
That's right. Hi, Oprah. Hi, Madam Vice President. It's nice to be with you all.
Yes.
Hi.
And so what did you want to say to the Vice President?
So, Madam Vice President, we are, like many, many young Americans, just experiencing a very high cost of living. We ended up giving up our apartment, moving in with our parents who were so gracious to take us in for over a year so that we could save money and ultimately buy a home, because that's what we thought the American dream was, to get married and buy a home and have a baby. And now here we are, and our mortgage is incredibly higher than what we thought it would be. And my sister and our brother-in-law are living with us right now so that they can hopefully one day do the same. And while it's beneficial for us because they help us pay off some of our mortgage, it's also beneficial for them because they can save on cheaper rent. But we really would love to know what your plan is to help lower the cost of living.
So again, the question is, what is your plan to help lower the cost of living? And I got to say this, guys, this isn't right. Like, just listening to their story, you know, her sister moved in to help them so that they would be able to have a second child. And then maybe her sister and her sister's, I guess, husband would be able to start a family as well. What happened to this country? People shouldn't have to do this. Guys, my parents did not have to do this. My parents were able to, you know, my dad was able to work. My dad was in the military. My dad worked. When my mom was pregnant with me, she stopped working until I went to kindergarten. So my parents never had to pay for daycare, by the way. She stopped working until I went to kindergarten, and then my mom went back to work. She did the same thing when she had my sister. Nobody should have to live like this. Did everybody hear what has happened to this country? And by the way, Rachel and Dude, they have degrees. I remember because I covered that story. So for all the people that say, well, they should have went to college, they did. So we got to stop it with the shaming. We have to stop it with the, you should have went to college. You should have picked a better career. You shouldn't have gone to college and ended up with student loan debt. You should have gone into a trade. Everybody can't go into a trade. The trades will become oversaturated and the pay will decrease once it becomes oversaturated. This is what happened when everybody was going into law. I remember this at one point in time. Everybody's trying to go to law school. Coincidentally, seemed to be happening after that movie Legally Blonde came out. But at one point, everybody's trying to go into nursing. And then this field becomes oversaturated. The point is, guys, this economic system is not working. Nobody should have to live like this in this country. This is ridiculous. But is she going to answer the question? What is her plan?
Yeah, first of all, thank you both for being here. And yours is a story I hear around the country as I travel. And in terms of both rightly having the right to have aspirations and dreams and ambitions for your family, and working hard and finding that the American dream is, for this generation and so many recently, far more elusive than it's been. And we need to deal with that. And there are a number of ways. One is bringing down the cost of everyday necessities, including groceries. So that's why I'm taking on, for example, price gouging, which is when, you know, most companies and corporations are good, but for those bad ones, they take advantage of people, especially during a pandemic or extreme weather, and they end up jacking up prices, and there needs to be accountability and consequence for that. So I'm going to be taking on price gouging. But it's also about dealing with what we need to do around home ownership, right? So as someone mentioned during this film, look, I grew up a child of a mother who worked very hard. She raised me and my sister, and she saved up. And by the time I was a teenager, she was able to buy a home.
Let me add in something that Kamala's leaving out that I think people need to know. First of all, when Kamala's mom came to this country, she came here with enough money to pay for her PhD program. Her mom came here with a college education, which is something that a lot of us who were born in this country didn't even have. So if we want to make comparisons, like think about that for just a, so it's not like she came here with nothing. She did come here with the money to enter a PhD program. This is important for people to understand, because if we're looking at like people from my family, for example, we had to take out student loans. Her mom didn't have to do that because she already was she's coming from India, but from what I understand, she was coming from a caste where she had the money. So I'm not saying her mother wasn't middle class. She, according to the numbers, she would have been, because she was in a PhD program. And when you're in a PhD program full time, it's hard to have a job. And if you do have a job, it's going to be a part-time job. So yeah, she probably still was middle class, but she came here with money already. She was able to jump into a PhD program. That is important. And Kamala needs to say that to people. So there's that. 2, we know this story already. I done told you guys before, like, well, my mom and mom, no. We get to the point. The question is, what are you going to do? Now, she started off, she was talking about the price gouging, right? Stopping price gouging. But then what are you going to do when you stop the price gouging? How does that, it's going to help obviously with the groceries, because the groceries will be cheaper. But then you run into another issue. And I want to pull this, I want to talk about this at some time at length. I did look over when Richard Nixon did this. Richard Nixon, he put like a cap on this, on price gouging. And I've read a number of articles about it. And every article that I read about it said that in the end, this ended up causing more inflation. Now, if any of you are economists or really like privy to this information, I'd love to hear about it. I would love to have an economist, another economist come back on the show and talk to me about that. Like, would that happen again if they were to cap the prices? Will we end up with more inflation? So I would love to talk to an economist about that. But I think Kamala is not getting to the root issue. The problem is people are not making a living wage in this country. So regardless if you put a cap on price gouging, regardless if you're giving people the $25,000, whether it's a tax credit or a down payment for a home, people don't have the money. People just don't have it. Let me let her finish.
And we grew up actually for a long time in an apartment on top of a childcare center that was owned by the woman we called our second mother, because she helped my mother raise us. And she was a small business owner, Miss Shelton. So I'll bring all this together to tell you, the way I think about it is, one, when people work hard and have a dream of buying a home, we should give you the opportunity to be able to do that, which is why part of my plan is for first-time homeowners, buyers, to have a $25,000 down payment assistance to buy your first home.
So now it's $25,000 down payment assistance. Now, I showed you right before this, it was a $25,000 tax credit. So this particular issue, I'll let her finish and I'll show you what it says on her website.
Because people just need to be able to get their foot in the door, and then you'll do the hard work. Part of my plan is what we need to do to support small businesses, because my second mother was a small business owner, and I love our small businesses and our small business owners. They are not only business leaders, they are community leaders. They mentor, they hire locally. And we have so many entrepreneurs in our country who have great ideas, incredible work ethic, but not necessarily access to capital, because not everybody, like my opponent, was handed $400 million on a silver plate that he filed bankruptcy 6 times on. And so part of my plan is to give startup small businesses a $50,000 tax deduction to start up their small business right now.
Okay. So, and she goes on to say right now it's 5,000. Now, here's the thing. I'm not saying this is bad, right? So some people who are Kamala stans, they'll hear this and they'll say, oh, Sabby thinks it's bad. No, I'm not saying it's bad. I don't want you to get your hopes up, because number one, people do we need more small businesses? Absolutely. Like, I'm a big fan of mom and pop places, but the reality is not everyone is going to start a small business, and not everyone wants to start a small business. So your answers to the economy shouldn't just be, I'm going to cap the prices. I am going to give people the $500,000 tax credit to start a small business. And the other answer, which is the $25,000 down payment. You're not getting to the root cause of the issue. Again, you are putting a Band-Aid on the wound instead of choosing to heal the wound so that you don't have to put another Band-Aid on it. And this has been the situation with our economy for quite some time. Now, we're going to come back to this video, but I'm going to show you right now because I pulled it up and I told you the rhetoric continues to change. Now, she just told you $25,000, right? $25,000, she said, down payment. But on her website, and we need to drive on into this because like I told you, I was going to be checking this because politicians are notorious for saying one thing, but then their website or their platform says something different. And I'll highlight it here for you. Under housing, Vice President Harris will provide first-time home buyers with up to $25,000 to help with their down payments. So does everybody understand? Again, this is for first generation homeowners and first time homeowners. So does everybody understand this? There's a difference between saying I'm giving you $25,000 for down payments, or this is a $25,000 tax credit and up to $25,000. Those are different things. So I don't know, but we'll go back to this part here.
Now it's $5,000. Nobody can start a small business with $5,000. So that's part of my plan.
That's a teeny tiny business.
That's a business in
teeny tiny business.
It's a concept of a business, right?
Yes.
You know where I'm going.
That's right. And it's still on paper with the $5,000.
It just hasn't happened, right? Part of to speak to you guys and your family and your dreams is what we need to do around giving middle-class families tax breaks. And so part of my plan is also to extend and expand the child tax credit to $6,000 so that you can, in the first year of your child's life, have the resources to be able to buy a crib and a car seat and clothes for your baby, knowing that's such an extraordinarily important time in their development, and you shouldn't have to worry about how you're going to take care of their basic needs. All of this and more is part of what I plan to build, and I call it an opportunity economy.
Let me pause here for a second. Look, I don't know if this all went to shit after Reaganomics or what. You know, I know trickle down did not trickle down, but somebody really needs to look into this, and maybe Professor Richard Wolff would be really good about this, because the reality is this. Tax credits, $6,000 tax credit so that you can get a crib. Like, what happened to this country? Like what is happening here? Why is it that in some other countries, the women can get like the full year of maternity leave and they don't have to worry about paying for daycare or anything like that? Now, I don't know how much it costs where you live, but where I am in the Boston area, first child, $3,000. And you know, it costs more for newborns. But how did we get to this point in this country? Like, why is it that a woman can't have a baby and be able to stay home and raise the baby if she wanted to and not have to take the baby to daycare? Not everybody feel comfortable taking a newborn to daycare. Also, there's some crazy things happen at those daycares. What happened? What happened to that? My mom was able to do that. So $6,000 tax credit, that's nice. Cap on the price gouging, that's nice. But again, I need to talk to an economist about that, because I do wonder based on what I read about the inflation. $25,000, whatever it's supposed to be to help for a home buyer, that's nice. But this is not going to fix the root issue. People can't afford to make a living in this country because people are not paid living wages. How is it that it's 2024 and the minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour? Hello? How is that even possible? We live in a country where a lot of people can't even take care. They don't really want you to take care of your kids. They want you to have these kids, but then they don't want you to take care of them. What are we doing to society, to our society? What are we doing? So the root cause here, we need to get down to what is a living wage in this country. 2, some of this stuff, remember when Bernie was running, he said what? We need childcare for everybody in this country. Other countries have this. Why are people paying $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month for someone to watch your kid? Just so that you can go to work, make money, they'll take the taxes out your check, and then most of that is going to rent, mortgage, or to pay the daycare center that you're rushing to get back to after you get off from work so that you don't get charged a late fee. What happened to this country?
And it's basically about creating opportunities, knowing so many people have the ambition, have the aspirations, are working hard, but just need opportunity to reach their goals and their dreams.
I saw you smiling with that $25,000 credit for the home. I saw that smile on your face. And
see, now it's back to $25,000 credit. So this is the other thing. I think Kamala has this, she's like, you need the opportunity. Listen, it's not that people aren't getting an opportunity. It's more so that people can't afford it. And also with the $25,000 and all that kind of stuff, I'm gonna be very honest with all of you. As someone who went through the home buying process in 2020 during the height of the pandemic, because the interest rates were extremely low, and I said, I better do this now. I don't know anywhere in this state where you can buy a house with $25,000 down. And we still got to figure out if this is a tax credit or if this is like a down payment. But either way, it doesn't get you a house here. That means you still have to have money saved to the side. Now, instead of giving people a $6,000 child tax credit, why don't you just make sure? We could have done this already. We could have had universal child care in this country. We could have had it. And for people who say, oh, I don't believe in that, that's socialism. Honey, we got socialism for Ukraine. We got socialism for Israel. Everyone in Israel has health care. Everyone in Israel has free college. We don't. And we give them $3.8 billion a year. What are we doing? We're not taking care of our own people in this country. That's the problem. I don't care what side of the political aisle you're on. That in itself inherently is a problem. And you know what? This is why when Bernie ran, this is why he was able to win over so many independents, because he called out the core issue, the corruption, the economic issue, the fact that people can't afford to have a decent living in this country. And when Bernie had town halls, from what I remember, when he was going to different cities, he was trying to talk to the people in those cities. Why we got all these celebrities calling into this town hall? You're in Detroit, Michigan. There are needs of people in Detroit that are specific to Detroit. And you got Chris Rock, Julia Roberts was there. You got all these celebrities calling in who do not understand the needs of people that live in Detroit. You're in Detroit. How about you talk about the school system? How about you talk about how they closed all these schools in Detroit? Why are you on here talking to like Oprah and Chris Rock and Ben Stiller? These people are not living this life. They ain't about that life. They're not everyday people. Why are they there? We're going to move on to the next topic. I just feel like these people are so out of touch, so out of touch. But look, I want to show you something. That's not even Kamala's plan. It didn't originate with her. It didn't start with her. Guess who it started with? I told you this was just Biden's administration all over again. Shout out to the viewer who sent this to me. Thank you. Thank you. Everybody remember this? We must do more. Biden administration wants to build 500,000 starter homes to fix America's affordable housing crisis. But will this be enough? This was December 26th of 2023. And it says it right here. President Biden is clearly alert to the issue and its political importance. He has backed several affordable housing bills and action plans in 2023, including the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act, which would produce 500,000 starter homes. Does that sound familiar? Right? Isn't that similar to what Kamala's trying to do? I think she's increased the number. And then there's this one as well. I told you this is just Biden's administration all over again. President Biden wants to give home buyers a $10,000 tax credit. Here's who will qualify. So she increased the number. So are these Kamala's plans or Biden's plans? So this is just going to be Joe Biden's administration all over again, right? Now, there's one topic that was raised during the town hall, which I think is the one that is going to help Kamala Harris out with female voters. And I noticed it last night. The tone completely changed once they brought up the issue of Roe v. Wade. And I think this is going to be the key, if anything. I think this particular issue is what is causing her to gain so much support from women. Listen to this.
I nearly died all because of Donald Trump's Supreme Court justices overturning Roe v. Wade.
So for the millions of you who watched the Democratic National Convention, you will remember Hadley Duvall telling her incredibly powerful story. And in case you didn't see it, here's just a brief look.
Growing up, I was an all-American girl. Varsity soccer captain, cheerleading captain, homecoming queen, and survivor. I was raped by my stepfather after years of sexual abuse. At age 12, I took my first pregnancy test, and it was positive.
Hadley is here. Stand up, Hadley.
See, guys, I'm calling it now. This is going to be the issue that brings over a lot of women, right? And we've already addressed that she is having difficulty with Black male voters, which she did acknowledge during the National Association of Black Journalists interview. So I think what she may be trying to do now is, okay, well, if I don't get Black male voters, maybe I can make up for that with the female voters. This is an area where she is particularly strong. And I will say that I'm not supporting Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, so don't come for me. But I will say this particular area, when it comes to reproductive rights, she is very strong with this area. And I don't know if they're going to end up having another debate or not. Like, it seemed like at one point maybe, but then it was like, no, So I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But if they do have another debate, you can bet this is going to be one of the topics on the debate stage. And like I said, this particular issue, she is very strong with, and she is able to relate to other women about it, not just because she is a woman, but also because she is always supported, like reproductive rights. So this is an area that could help Kamala. And so everybody needs to pay attention to this, because as many times as I've told you that the Democratic Party had multiple opportunities to pass Roe v. Wade, they decided not to. We covered this last night, actually, the number of times they could have had this done. And this is something that they kept in their back pocket. Now, the moment that Roe v. Wade was overturned, the Democratic Party is able to run on this issue. And some people have already told me that they will support her just on this issue alone. Now, listen to this. Oh, it stops there for some reason. Sorry, guys.
And there are more people like me out there. And there are going to be so many more who deserve their options. They deserve their choices. Let's get involved. We have someone who's willing to hear us at a level like never before. We have someone who wants to know what we want in this country. We have someone who wants to lift up our voice. And we need to show out and show up for her just like she's showing out and showing up for us.
All right. Thank you. Is there something you wanted to say to Madam Vice President?
So does everybody see that? Now, I wanted to show you that for a reason, because when it comes to Roe v. Wade, Democrats are running on this and they're saying that we're going to get this fixed, but they don't tell you how. How are they going to overturn it? How are they going to reverse it? Has anyone mentioned a plan for this? And this is one of those things I told you guys before that, like, look, if they don't come through, if she wins and they don't come through on this, you want to talk about angry women? Listen, some of you guys out there, some of you guys out there, you know us women, we can be very nice, but when we get angry, watch out. And when there's a lot of us that are angry, watch out. I think it is incredibly dangerous for Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party to say that they're going to reverse that and not explain to you how they're going to do it. Because I know a number of women that will be very upset about that if that does not change. Because you can almost pretty much anticipate if Kamala wins in 2024, then in 2028, it'll probably flip back Republican. And no, I don't think Donald Trump will run again in 2028, but it'll probably flip back Republican, right? So how are they going to change that? It was a Supreme Court decision. Are any Supreme Court justices retiring anytime soon? Let me know. Anybody? Hello? Any of the conservative Supreme Court justices resigning? How are they going to change that? I don't think they have a plan. And what was bothersome to me when I saw everybody cheering and saying, yeah, we got to protect women's reproductive, and that was constantly brought up throughout the town hall, but they don't tell you how they're going to do it. So to quote my comrade Rome, are they lying to you? There was something said here. There's a CNN panel, and I thought this was pretty interesting. Sure, Michael Singleton, he brought up the Oprah Winfrey town hall, and I want to show you what he said. Listen to this.
Black voters, generally speaking, are a bit hard to poll. So I want to go to a Howard University survey that came out today that suggested that she is performing around 82% with black voters writ large, meaning men and women. And Donald Trump is around 12%. That's the same number he received in 2020. I think a part of the reason, to Nia's point, that you're seeing the vice president double down on her support and outreach to women is because I assume the calculation from the campaign's perspective is if they can't make up room with men, specifically black men, can they sort of provide a buffer or a cushion, if you will, in some of those critical battleground states by continuously targeting and penetrating women voters around certain issues that are of importance to them? Whether or not that will be enough, I'm not exactly sure. I mean, polling data suggests when you look beneath the top line numbers that a lot of Trump's voters are typically underestimated. They typically aren't polled very well. And so his strengths may not necessarily reveal themselves in the data that we have access to, which is why you see that this race is a whole lot closer than I think many would have suspected it would have been.
So Sure Michael brings up an interesting point there. He mentions that Kamala Harris may be shifting towards a strategy of focusing on targeting a lot more women, because I think she's realizing that she is still struggling with black male voters. So she's looking elsewhere. And the abortion issue is a big issue for a lot of women in this country. So focusing on that issue is going to be important to our campaign. But at the same time, like I said, they're not telling you how they're going to fix that issue. And that is very problematic. He also said that, long story short, Trump supporters seem to be underestimated. It was also very clear to me that for whatever reason, a lot of these polls, Trump supporters are underpolled. Jordan Sheridan had talked about this also on Status Coup, that for whatever reason, Trump supporters are underpolled, or people are more reluctant to say that they're going to support Donald Trump. I just tell everybody this. I think at this point, this election it's still, I think, a very close race. And it's also interesting to me that they are not explaining to you guys just how close it is in the swing states, particularly when you look at people like Jill Stein, who was doing really well with Muslim voters in Michigan, far better than Kamala Harris, over 40%. Butch Ware said on, I think it's Glenn Greenwald's show or Malcolm on the Hill show, he did 2 interviews, that there's recent polling that he just saw that has not been released yet, which shows that third parties have over 50% of the Muslim vote in swing states. And when you see these polls on CNN that says Kamala at 42% or 50% and Donald Trump at like 48% in one state, they're not showing you the pull from third parties and how many people are willing to go that way. And this is one of the things I think that made people think that Hillary was going to win, because it showed that Hillary was, it was like, she's so far ahead of him. Oh, it's getting a little bit closer, but she's definitely going to win. And that was not the case. So everyone think about that. And then we have to pay attention to what is happening here. Now, this is new. Okay. I sound like Mr. Mackey on South Park. Okay. Check this out, fam. Lindsey Graham is up to this. In Nebraska, Republicans switched the state to winner take all. In Nebraska, Republicans, if they do this, they are trying to switch the state to winner take all. And it's too late for Maine to do the same. The impact could be enormous. So let me explain to you about this. If you don't know, Lindsey Graham is introducing a bill that would change that one district in Nebraska, which is a blue district, to a red district, which would make the whole state red. And Maine has a similar thing too, but in Maine, that one district is a Republican district. So Andrew is saying that it's too late for them to make that change in Maine. So it could just be that Lindsey Graham waited until he knew it would be too late for them to make that change in Maine to introduce this bill to change that one district in Nebraska to a Republican district. Now, some of you are like, okay, that's just like 1 point or whatever, but let me show you the impact that that would have. Namely, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania would no longer be enough to get Harris to 270. She would need at least one more swing state, Nevada, Georgia, Arizona, or North Carolina, to get over the red line. And I'll show you what that looks like if that were to happen. If you look at Nebraska here, again, there would usually be a little square here. That's a blue square, that one district that would have that point. But he's trying to get that flipped to all red. And then if you look over here in Maine, you'll see that other district here, which is the conservative one, which they said is too late to change Maine. So what he is saying is that if this happens, then even if she wins Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, that's still not enough to get to 270. In fact, that would be a tie, 269 and 269. And at that point, if I believe correctly, it's supposed to go back to the House if there's a tie between them, and then the House would vote, but it's a Republican House. So that too. Now something could change. She could end up winning Nevada. I think Nevada is going to be red. I still kind of believe that, but they said that she just pulled ahead in Nevada. So Dems have had Nevada be blue for, I think, since Hillary. I think Hillary also had blue Nevada, if I remember correctly. But this is just what they're showing you what that would happen. And it was interesting because Chris Hayes, he retweeted this, and Chris Hayes was like, I don't know if I still have it there. It's probably gone. It's gone. Chris Hayes had retweeted that, and he said, there's no way this isn't fair. And you know what I say to that? So it looks like the Republicans are trying to change the Electoral College with Nebraska. And Chris Hayes said it's undemocratic. And I just point to the Democratic Party kicking third party candidates off their ballot. I point to the Democratic Party kicking Jill Stein off the ballot and suing her over and over again. Same to Cornel West, same to Claudia De La Cruz. And they have to constantly raise funds. So the Democratic Party drains their resources, preventing them from, having a even stronger, I would say, campaign, because they spend so much time in courts trying to fight back against these things. Both parties do it. So both parties don't represent true democracy. But if that happens, that would be interesting. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what she ends up doing. But I don't know, man. I don't know. It's wild times. You can always vote third party like me. You can always vote third party like me. Let's go to some of the comments here. Yeah. Smash the like if you haven't done so. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. Let's go to the comments, and then we're going to get to a really fun story. You're going to laugh at this one. They did a good job. Thank you, Colton. This town hall wasn't aimed to Detroit. It was aimed to pull suburban women. Yeah, I'm getting that impression, Colton. You know, it's like, what about the cities? What about the urban areas? What about everybody else? It just seemed like everything is just aimed towards college educated, suburban, like. Thank you, Troy. Turn the page when you're the current book. Stop. Oh, that's a good point. That's a funny one, Troy. Here I am on the road again. Here I am. Turn the page. Baby Ethernet, thank you. This is vapid, like those celebrity COVID monologues. LPA says Gretch is auditioning. She ain't fooling nobody, even the Obama name drop. Yeah, she was one of the people they were considering to run. Thanks, Janine. People need to preface their questions by asking, without explaining your history and background, what is your policy? I like that, Janine. I like that. Thanks, Anita. Catching you late from Columbia, South Carolina. Go Gamecocks. What is up, Anita? What's up, fam? What is up? Columbia, my former home. Thank you, Phenomenal Mysticism. I'm thinking about submitting a blank ballot, so then if the Democrats lose, they won't blame me, since they only blame third parties. Plus, it's not rewarding genocide either. I'm in deep blue Massachusetts. Massachusetts represent. Massachusetts represent. What's up? Thank you, Beeman. Border bill was connected to Ukraine funding. I thought so. There was something else attached to that bill. Thank you, Janice. He'd prefer to run on a problem than fix it. Pot, meat, kettle. Roe v. Wade sound familiar? The freaking hypocrisy of these grifters. Good point. Thank you, Jay. First, Kamala has a town hall with Oprah. Next, she'll have one with Dick Cheney. I bet you. Kathy, would Richard Wolff come on? He's brilliant. You know what? You remind me. I should reach out to Richard Wolff. I really want to ask him about the price gouging and inflation connection. Samantha, you need to remove all regulations and taxes. Marvin, should ask her a collard green question. Oh, man. Shout out to Greatly Blessed for becoming a Sabby member. Give Greatly Blessed a big whoop, whoop. Thank you, Moulin, says TGIF. Thanks, Greatly Blessed. Why doesn't Harris tell us how she got her her foot in the door? Willie Brown, anyone? Thank you, Silvapina. You are one hell of a host. I have learned a ton from your show just from a few episodes. Love from Italian in Burbank, California. Callie in the house. Callie. Thank you, Regine. Thank you, Sabby. You're welcome. Everything is okay, he says. I totally feel you, Sabby. I had to return to work 3 weeks after having my child, and it broke me to my core. Yeah, see, like women shouldn't have to do that. Like you shouldn't have to do that. It just, there's such thing called bonding time. Thanks, Trash Panda, the United Slaves of America. Thanks, Janice. Reagan untied minimum wage from inflation / cost of living. That ended price stability. Before that, COLA increase equals an increase in payroll expense for corporations. Interesting. Thanks, Jack. Sabs, get geopolitical economy report Brian Norton. I think that's his name. He's brilliant. I can look into that. Thank you, Beeman. Obama could have signed the Freedom of Choice Act, but didn't. Yep. And he blamed Lieberman. There's always someone to blame. You guys notice? They always blame somebody. Thank you, Stan, with the oppressed clap for her assault, but didn't mention charging dad. Thank you, Bert. Kamala was literally in the suburbs here, not the city. And look at you doing the King of Detroit right. Go Bruce. Interesting. Yeah, man. It's like they just keep forgetting about all of us. Don't forget to answer that poll, guys. I want to show you that at the end as well. We are pivoting now to a pretty heated discussion on Piers Morgan's show. Now, I have to say this. The guy here, that Piers Morgan, he's brought him on before, and I don't know why he continues to bring this guy. This guy here, Jonathan, he's an IDF soldier. This guy is a war criminal. Did you guys know this? This is not just someone coming on to debate people about Israel and Gaza. That guy is a war criminal. He's one of the people that rejoined the IDF to go kill people in Gaza. He has no remorse, no sympathy for the civilians that have died. And like this guy has no empathy whatsoever. And Piers Morgan continues to bring him back on the show. Now, this conversation gets a little bit heated between IDF dude and Candace Owens and Cenk because this is after the recent pager explosions and the walkie-talkie explosion. So it does get really heated. And Jonathan is his name, the IDF soldier. He does not do a good job at answering Candace's question, and things just go crazy from there. Let's dive in, guys. Get the popcorn for this one.
Candace, your reaction to this extraordinary operation, seemingly led by Mossad, ordered by Netanyahu yesterday, ongoing today, right across Lebanon. 2 children are reported to have been killed in this operation, who were clearly civilians and not Hezbollah terrorists. That's reported by the Lebanese Health Authority, which is not Hezbollah. What is your response to this? Is it, as Jonathan just said, fair game if primarily the people who were targeted, almost all of them appear to have been Hezbollah?
Well, I think a question that I immediately want to ask him, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to, is that if you're able to delineate how surgical and precise these operations can be with the intelligence that you have, why are there 40,000 dead innocent women and children and civilians in Gaza? Because that's a question that I've always had. We keep hearing the excuse that behind every one of these victims is a Hamas soldier, but there's not 40,000 dead Hamas soldiers. And if the excuse is that there's a tunnel under there, I mean, just me thinking logically through engineering, you would only have to hit a tunnel at a couple of points to render it ineffective. So I'm just interested in why you guys can perform surgical procedures, but seemingly not in Gaza, where it looks like just an absolute war zone and buildings and hospitals and children and women are dead.
So before he jumps in to answer that, one thing I want to say is that was an excellent question, because prior to this conversation, he was talking about, these are strategic, attacks. It's exact precision when he was talking about Lebanon, which I call BS on that as well. But that point that Candace made there, that is spot on, because it's the reality, because they're not trying to be, precise. Those are lies. They want all those people gone. They want to kill as many of them as possible. And the part that she mentioned about the tunnel, I've said this from the beginning. If you know that they're hiding in tunnels, why didn't you just go into the tunnels? Why are you blowing up hospitals and schools, killing little kids and shit? Because they want to get rid of all of them. Speaking of which, by the way, Macklemore just dropped Hens Hall Part 2. It's on Twitter. It's on Spotify, YouTube. Go listen to it. It's based. I wish I could play it on here, but I can't because of copyright. But all the proceeds go to UNRWA. It's based. And he calls out Kamala Harris this time in this one, not Joe Biden. Listen to this.
That point. Let's get a response from Jonathan. It's a fair question.
It's a very fair question, and I appreciate it. And I'd like to make a comparison. I'm sure that you follow events and you're very interested in what happens in Israel and with what our enemies are doing, and I see that. But I'm sure that you know that until this cyber operation that Israel reportedly did, Israel was able to kill more than 500 Hezbollah operatives in Lebanon, throughout Lebanon. Now, I haven't seen you tweet about it, any of the other people who usually support the other side. But if you take a look at how many civilians were killed in Lebanon as a result, as an unfortunate byproduct of Israeli strikes, and if you compare that to the situation in Gaza, I think that what you will find is it's the same IDF, the same operating procedures that we have in Gaza, only that here in Lebanon, until now, The situation is that Hezbollah has so far distinguished itself from civilian population, and they haven't been fighting from within cities. And as such, when the IDF has deployed lethal weapons against them, then terrorists have been killed and not civilians. And it's not because it's a different IDF. It's because, as you said, you used the word excuses. I would call it a reason and the sad reality of Hamas using Gazan population as their human shields, which I think is deplorable. And if you claim to be a defender of Palestinians and Arabs and other people, and you have that in your heart, and I think that your criticism should be pointed first and foremost towards Hamas and all of the other cowards who are using Palestinians as their human shields, who are afraid to fight out in the open, who are firing rockets from schools, and who are using mosques as their launch pads against Israel. That, I think, is despicable, and that should be condemned. Not the fact that we are going in there to fight them after they attacked us on October the 7th. But by all means.
So here we go again with it all started on October the 7th, right? They're not going to mention the times when Palestinians were having peaceful protests and the IDF were shooting at their foot. They're not going to mention the times when they've gone into Gaza and they've decided to mow the lawn. This isn't, listen, it wasn't just after October 7th that Israel started killing Palestinians, okay? This idea that he brings up of Hamas, they're shooting rocket launchers, etc. Compare the weapons that Hamas has to the weapons that Israel has. Israel gets their weapons from us. So I'll let you do that comparison. This idea that they're using the people as human shields. This has been debunked over and over again. Because if they were using the people as human shields, then all those schools and all those refugee camps and hospitals that you've bombed would have produced a number of dead Hamas soldiers. Instead, what we have are numbers and numbers of dead children. We have heard IDF soldiers even say that even the children are Hamas. They've killed babies. So that excuse that they give, that is to protect what Israel is doing. They tell on themselves when they say, well, they're hiding in the tunnels. Then why aren't you going in the tunnels? If they're in the tunnels, why are you bombing a hospital? If they're in the tunnels, why are you bombing the refugee camps? Israel has even killed Americans, and our government is just letting it happen.
Issue a condemnation. I didn't issue a condemnation. I asked you a question and you just delivered me the same talking points that we always hear. And you didn't actually provide me an answer.
I actually
if
did.
You are
I gave you
able
an
to go into
explanation.
a foreign country, you guys you have control over the Gaza Strip, right? It's a part of Israel.
No, it isn't.
If you are
No.
able to go into a country like Lebanon where you don't have control, where you can't just shut off their water, where you can't be monitoring people's actions in the same way and within the same proximity to Israel, why are you unable to similarly perform a surgical operation to locate where exactly those Hamas soldiers are? And by the way, do you have a number for how many Hamas soldiers have been killed in the Gaza Strip?
Right. So, I mean, you either weren't listening or maybe I wasn't
how
clear.
many Hamas soldiers have been killed?
Yeah, I heard your question,
Strip?
Candace. I heard your question. Maybe you weren't listening or I wasn't clear. I'm usually clear when I speak, but I'll repeat it.
Smart ass. You see that? Smart ass comment.
Israel has been able to take out more than 500 Hezbollah operatives and with absolutely minimal collateral damage in Lebanon. Why is that the case, which is different from the situation in Gaza? Because Hezbollah hasn't been hiding amongst civilians yet. Hamas is. And that is why, unfortunately, Palestinian civilians in Gaza have also been killed in significant numbers and many have been wounded.
That's a damn lie. What's funny about this is you can see Cenk is already sweating. So, Cenk is boiling inside. Like he is burning up inside. He's like, let me at him, Pierce. Let me at him.
If I were you, I wouldn't use Hamas information. I wouldn't rely on Hamas statistics and to claim for them to be true.
I'm asking you, I'm not asking Hamas. How many Hamas soldiers have been killed in the Gaza Strip?
Yeah, I'll answer. And it's nice that we're having an interview and Pierce is getting a few minutes off. According to the information that I have, and this is working numbers, I don't think that there are final numbers, and I think it will take a lot of time before a definite number of dead Hamas terrorists is given. But the best assessment that I am aware of is between 16 and 18,000 Hamas operatives that have been killed in combat in Gaza.
Yeah,
right. Let's bring in Cenk. Why are you laughing?
Because that's an outrageous, ludicrous number. Even the IDF doesn't make up numbers like that. Once they said 13,000, then they went back to 9,000. And this gentleman right here just made up 16 to 18,000. So Jonathan, do you concede that Israel has dictatorial control over Gaza and the West Bank? That it's a different situation than a sovereign nation that could have military or different barracks or can separate folks? It's like saying in occupied France, well, why was the resistance hiding among the civilian population? So of course we had to kill all the French who were protecting the resistance. So the problem is that another country, Israel, has dictatorial control over Gaza and West Bank. I mean, you've got to acknowledge that, right? I mean, you're not claiming that Gaza is free. You guys just destroyed 85%
I think that the only thing ridiculous...
If I may say that, I think we're focusing too much on the Israel-Hamas war, which we've done a lot on this show, as you know, with you guys, right? I would rather, Cenk, just get your reaction to a specific operation which appears to have been conducted at Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel's instructions, and carried out primarily led by Mossad. From an operational point of view, obviously a stunning success. But is it valid? Is it fair game, as Jonathan said, given the way that Hezbollah has been attacking Israel now for years?
Yeah, so the most important part of this, Piers, is why did Israel act now? Because, look, you could say, oh, Saddam Hussein was a bad guy, so we should have gone into Iraq. No, I don't think so. You could say Hezbollah are terrorists, but then Israel has killed 30 times the civilians that Hamas has, let alone Hezbollah. So is the Israeli government, the IDF, and Netanyahu terrorists?
But you don't dispute that Hezbollah has been targeting Israel for years.
Okay. Yeah, and Israel's been targeting. Israel bombed Beirut, bombed Damascus.
No, forget Israel for a moment.
They bombed Tehran. They bomb all their neighbors.
Yeah, but
hold on. Why now, Piers?
Specifically, do you accept that Hezbollah has persistently targeted Israel with endless rockets? Do you accept that?
Oh, they've launched rockets, no question. And I'm sure you guys can see that.
But that was after Israel was already attacking them first. Remember last year, after October 7th, I was telling you guys, I was even showing you back then, Israel was attacking Lebanon. It's not the first time. Israel's also been attacking Syria. They want the whole region. They want all of it. And they've been very clear about that. I've never seen any administration that has been more bold and more vocal about what they want. And world leaders just turn their heads and go, I don't know what you're talking about. They're trying to fight Hamas. So, and I'm going to show you that recent ceasefire statement that was just announced about the Biden administration at the end of this clip, because it's just very damning. You can all see what's happening here. You know, the big problem is that our politicians are controlled by the Israeli lobby. Our politicians belong to organizations like AIPAC and J Street, and that should have never happened. That should have never happened.
Israel has dictatorial control over Gaza and the West Bank.
But don't go back to that. So is it fair game, as Jonathan said, if it was Hezbollah terrorists who were specifically targeted through their pages, is that fair game, but given the state of the warfare between Hezbollah and Israel?
Look, I can answer that question, but we've got to get to the more important question.
Well, answer that question first.
Hold on, I'll answer it. So did they check that the 2,800 people and the children near them and the other civilians near them, that they were all, quote unquote, terrorists before they decided to murder all of them? Now, luckily, only 12 died, but 2,800 were injured. No, they didn't check. And by the way, buyer beware of Israeli products. Apparently, they have bombs in them. Okay.
So he's saying, do you suggest we send them a warning first? So I thought you guys said you do that anyway. You see how you catch them in lies? I thought, according to you, Jonathan, didn't you say that the IDF sends warnings first? And it's not just about Gaza. It's not just about what's happening in Lebanon with the pagers and the walkie-talkies. It's not just about all that. It's also about the fact that you guys are kicking people out of their homes in the West Bank, dragging people out of their homes. Largest expansion in the West Bank. I guess Hamas has embedded themselves among the people there too, huh? Get out of here.
So, do you suggest we send them a warning?
Question is why
you
now?
Remind me of when the BBC asked me if we should have warned the Hamas terrorists who were keeping our 4 hostages before we went in to save them. Why didn't we warn them before? Because civilians were killed in the combat. You are just as ridiculous in your pontification and in your acrobatics to try to smear Israel. You're really unable to say black is black and white is white. And look how low Piers has to go in order to get you to say something against Hezbollah. How low does he have to go in order to justify Israel defending itself?
It's easy. It's easy. I call out Hamas and Hezbollah all the time. I wish they would never fire any rockets. I wish there would be no violence.
Right.
You, on the other hand, are totally okay with killing 30 times the number. Hold on, let me finish. You're okay with killing 30 times the number of civilians that Hamas did. Obviously, that's terrorism on a mass scale that Israel does.
No, it isn't.
But you say it's okay because we're the good guys? No, that makes you terrorists.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't.
You didn't want to kill them.
No matter how many times you repeat the lie, it doesn't turn it to be true. Israel is defending itself against a jihadi enemy, an enemy that has said we are not going to stop until we kill all the Jews. Wouldn't want.
So let me get this straight. So the number of times we've heard statements from the IDF, we've heard statements from people that are a part of Netanyahu's cabinet say they want all the Palestinians gone. They want all the Arab people gone. Why is it okay for them to make those blatant statements? Why is it okay for them to say that they are just defending their self, but nobody else has a right to defend their self against Israel? So Israel's allowed to punch you, kick you, knock you down. But if you hit them back, you're the problem. This is the question I would ask. Why is that okay? You're not defending yourself when you're the one who is the aggressor. You're not defending yourself when you're the one that's kicking people out of their homes and you're taking people's homes. You're a criminal. You're the threat. You're the problem. And that's simply how I see it.
Yeah. You or anybody else to be in that situation, but that is the situation that Israel is in. We have to defend ourselves against people who say our only goal in life is to eradicate Israel and kill all the Jews who live there and build a Sharia-based state in Palestine. Yeah. Those are their words. So, I don't know how you think that you could defend yourself against it, but being nice isn't one of them.
You live in La La Land, where you say the Palestinians might prevent an Israeli state. Well, Israel exists, but you prevent a Palestinian state, take away all their freedom, you take away all their rights, you kill them wantonly anytime you want, you destroy all of Gaza, and you pretend not to be the terrorist. So let me ask you something. Is the IDF the most incompetent military in the history of the world, that they just accidentally killed over 30,000 civilians, including over 25,000 women and children in Gaza? Are they buffoons who just cannot ever get the right target? Oh, we got a couple of Hamas guys. Oops, we killed a stadium full of women and children.
Listen,
and you're pretending not to be a terrorist?
Is someone who would be sitting here and doing the apologetics of Hamas. And I say that with a little respect. For you to be saying that without having lived in Israel, without having dealt with terrorists that are going after our families and women and children, without even understanding what...
It's you. You're the one going after people. You guys were the aggressor. You've been the aggressor. You kicked these people off their land. And then you put them into an open air prison and you expect them to just not try to get out. Look, what kind of madness is this, ladies and gentlemen?
Hamas is. You compare Hamas to French resistance fighters? Seriously? You compare Hamas, a jihadi terrorist genocidal organization that says, it's a stupid analogy. It's reckless, and you're whitewashing Hamas by even thinking that you can compare French resistance against Nazi Germany to Hamas terrorists that are willing to burn and butcher and rape and kill Israeli civilians.
I'm not talking about the Hamas terrorists. I'm talking about the civilians you butchered.
I'm talking about butchering anybody.
I want to bring
Cenk should have pushed back there when he brought up the sexual assault again, Cenk should have pushed back and said, "Are you serious? Didn't CNN do an entire investigation about the Palestinian detention center, about the Palestinian prisoners that you detained, and they have video evidence of people being sexually assaulted there by the IDF?" Cenk should have brought that up. He might not have been thinking about that at that moment, but he should have put that. Every time they bring that up, you make sure you mention what was exposed about the Palestinian detention center. That's important. A lot of people don't mention that.
Candace
a
here.
Stadium full of dead women and children, and you say that their lives don't count, right? Their lives don't count. Have you ever lived in Gaza?
No, I've never
He didn't say that lives didn't count. I want to bring in Candace to ask the same question I asked Cenk, which he hasn't really answered in a clear, simple manner, which I think is a very easy question to answer. Hezbollah are wedded to constantly attacking Israel. They are an enemy of Israel, as Hamas are. So is it, as Jonathan said, fair game for Israel to have conducted this operation, which appears to have been almost, and I use that phrase very advisedly, almost exclusively against Hezbollah terrorists?
If the operation was targeted almost exclusively at Hezbollah operatives and it was surgical, I think every state has a right when it's being attacked to launch an attack back at the operatives that are attacking them. That's a very easy answer for me. And I take, by the way, Jonathan, great exception to you painting me as some like broad defender of Middle Eastern. You said the Palestinian people. I just defend innocent life. And so whether it's October 7th and Israeli children being killed and Israeli children being taken away, I used my platform to say how wrong it was when people were pulling down the signs. And I'm also feeling just as strongly about the Palestinian women and children. And I don't like when people try to conflate humanity as some political position that's against the Jews or against the Palestinians. At the end of the day, the preservation of life is what needs to come first. And I don't feel, if you did this in Lebanon, great, I'm happy for that. I don't think that has been your priority in Gaza. And I use my platform to say how wrong I think what's happening is there.
Let me just interject here for just a second. So this was after the pager explosion when this interview took place. But since then, the day after that, there was the walkie-talkie explosion where it was reported by CNN where over 400 people were injured. So just keep that in mind, guys. This is right after the pager explosion, but then there was another walkie-talkie explosion after that. So,
but that's not a condemnation against Jews or the Jewish people. It's a condemnation against Netanyahu's government, which I think has become somewhat radicalized. And I think that's a fair critique, given the fact that you have so many Israelis that are taking to the street protesting him, as well as the families of the people who are hostages who have been protesting him and speaking out, as well as some of the most prominent Jews in America, like Ari Emanuel, who is a Zionist, who has said that he thinks what Bibi Netanyahu is doing is selfish. So I think it's important to separate what is fair critique and an understandable emotion that people are having, seeing so many dead Palestinian children on their screens every day on X and on Instagram. And I know, Piers, you are also being tagged in these photos of mothers mourning and screaming. It's wrong.
Yeah, no, I agree. Jonathan.
I will say this, Jonathan doesn't care about those kids that are, dying. And I've never seen images like this before until October 7th. Some of the images that I've seen of the children it will always sit with me. But I will say Jonathan doesn't care because he doesn't see them as human. Jonathan is a war criminal. Jonathan should not be on this platform acting as though he's just some random guy who was once a part of the IDF. Jonathan went in and killed those people. I want to be very clear about that. Jonathan went in and killed those people. This guy is a murderer.
Specifically for you, is a breaking story that the Israeli Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, has declared the start of a new phase, his words, of war as the IDF turns attention to the northern front with Lebanon. Now, that's a massive escalation in what is already a deeply turbulent situation. Can Israel conduct wars on all these different fronts?
Yeah, I will, of course, answer that. And I'll reflect on what you said before, Candace. I appreciate your words, and I think that I agree with you on protecting human life, dignity of human beings.
No,
I think we're in total agreement. And if you used your platform for good, humane purposes, I commend it. And that's great. And full stop, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Regarding the current situation in Lebanon.
Candace, I sincerely hope Candace looked up who this guy was after this discussion.
Just before coming on, I saw that tweet, and I think what Defense Minister Gallant is doing is messaging to the US and to Tehran and to Beirut that Israel is getting closer and that the level of frustration within Israel with the current unsustainable situation of more than 70,000 Israeli civilians that have been pushed out of their homes and tens of Israeli communities in northern Israel that are now ghost towns because Hezbollah has been attacking them directly, and these areas are unsafe to live in. And for 11 months, and I'm sure that many people don't know it because it's not really reported a lot in international media, but Israeli civilians have been targeted by Hamas for about a year. And people are saying enough. For how long are we going to have to live in temporary housing in other places of Israel? And when will the Israeli government make sure that it is safe to live in sovereign Israel? And
people in Gaza feel the same way, Jonathan. Talking about people living in temporary housing, people not feeling safe, people being pushed out of their homes. This guy literally talked about Israelis being pushed out of their homes. This guy talking about them being pushed out of their homes. Meanwhile, Israeli settlers and IDF members are pushing people out of their homes in the West Bank. They've been doing this for years. This did not start after October 7th. And now we're supposed to feel sorry for you because you are getting a taste of your own medicine. This is crazy. This is bizarre. This is really bizarre. This is literally like a slave master wanting you to have sympathy on them instead of the slave. This is insane.
I think that's a very basic, very legitimate claim of a civilian population that says enough. We want to go back to our homes. We haven't done anything to deserve this. And I think that there's been a long process of building this up. And to answer the question, yes, Israel can. It'll be tough. It will be, I think, very, very difficult. And it will be a horrible war. If Israel and Hezbollah go all out against each other. Hezbollah is a very powerful Iranian proxy with tens of thousands of rockets, with the ability and intention to hit and kill thousands of Israeli civilians. And of course, Israel will not be taking that sitting down, and Israel will retaliate. And I'm not going to be surprised to see you and perhaps other people first condemning Israel for defending itself and then maybe thinking why Israel is doing it.
And you know what they'll try to do? They're going to try to get the U.S. military involved in their mess. So I tell you again, if you have friends or family members in the military, tell them to get out. This is Israel. They've been planning this for so long. This all-out war. You think they're going to be able to fight Hezbollah? They're going to be able to fight Hamas and Hezbollah and all these people at the same time together? No, they're going to ask for the U.S. government to intervene and to bring in U.S. troops. And once again, your kids, your family members will be going to the Middle East to go kill people for this genocidal apartheid state.
What is happening is that Hezbollah has fired more than 5,000 rockets at Israel in the past months alone. They have gone a bit unnoticed by international media, and perhaps Israel now is saying enough is enough and we're going to defend ourselves. And if Hezbollah didn't get the message the first time with the beepers, maybe they'll be getting it today with the walkie-talkies. And if they don't get those two messages and understand that they have transgressed and are aggressing against Israeli civilians too much, then maybe perhaps more needs to happen. I, as an Israeli, hope that we won't need to go to that situation, because I know that it will be bad. There will be bloodshed. It will be carnage in Israel and in Lebanon. It is still avoidable. And those who need to stop firing are Hezbollah, who have been firing at Israel for the last 11 months without anybody really condemning it or doing anything about it.
Okay.
No, that's BS. The U.S. government has condemned it multiple times. In fact, the U.S. government is protecting you and not condemning you as much as it should. Every time you are to blame for something, the U.S. government finds an excuse for you. So stop it with that BS. Second of all, Israel has the Iron Dome. Israel has a shield of protection that the others do not. Gaza doesn't have an Iron Dome. The West Bank doesn't have an Iron Dome, right? Lebanon doesn't. Israel has an Iron Dome. So a good amount of those missiles that have been flown their way are intercepted by the Iron Dome. Don't ever forget about that, guys. They have a portion of defense that others do not.
Okay. Thank you, Jonathan. Cenk, I'll give you the final word on this part of the debate, and then I'm going to say goodbye to you and Jonathan. And Candace, you're going to stay on just for a little bit of a chat after it's just me and you. So just, Cenk, your response to what Jonathan just said there. Clearly, this is a massive escalation already. Nobody's quite sure how Hezbollah is going to respond. But as Jonathan said, they are equipped to, if they go all out, to have a proper, massive, major war with Israel, which would have enormous repercussions for the whole region. What is your thought about that prospect?
Yeah, so first of all, there's a correct path here. Take the ceasefire, stop the occupation, 2 states, and let both Israel and the Palestinians live in peace and freedom.
None of this is related to Hezbollah. Sorry to interrupt, but none of this is related to Hezbollah.
It's 100% related to Hezbollah.
No, it isn't. Hezbollah, this Iranian proxy, has nothing to do with Palestinians. Hezbollah has nothing to do with Palestinians. They are Lebanese. They are Shiite Lebanese. They have nothing to do with Palestinians. They have nothing to do with Palestinians. There's not a single Palestinian in Hezbollah. So for you to tie it to Hamas is ridiculous.
No, you're
it is whitewashing.
Ridiculous.
It's the old, tired propaganda against Israel. You have to be honest and address the situation. Hezbollah has nothing to do with Palestinians.
Hezbollah is doing it because of the occupation. Are you so stupid you don't understand that?
None of Hezbollah's business. Nothing to do with Hezbollah.
Oh, who all the Muslims. Watch us.
Who appointed Hezbollah? Who appointed Hezbollah other than their Iranian masters to have anything to say about Israel and Palestinians? What have Lebanese militias got to do with it?
You don't want peace. I know. You want to occupy and steal their land as long as humanly possible. I got it.
Hezbollah doesn't have a say. It's not their business. It's Israel and Palestinians. If you were to say, take a ceasefire with Hamas, I would say that's a valid topic to discuss. What does Hezbollah have to do with Palestinians? Absolutely nothing. The only thing that they have in common is that they are funded by Iran.
You think Hezbollah is attacking Israel out of thin blue air? Do you actually genuinely believe that Hezbollah is attacking Israel for no reason at all, just because they don't like Jews? No, they're attacking you because of the occupation. Are you so incredibly ignorant that you don't understand that simple concept?
The only ignorant person here is you, my esteemed colleague to the panel, to be parroting Iranian talking points and
blah, 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 blah. I know. Everything is terrorist. Anyone who's opposed to Israel is terrorist.
And you can't even make a coherent
Israel
claim.
can murder anyone they like, but they're not terrorists. I know.
What has Hezbollah got to do with Palestinians? Nothing, except that they have the same benefactor, Iran, that is providing them weapons. Nothing else. No logical connection, no religious connection, no territorial connection, nothing. Only empty talking points from people like you and from Iranian parrots. That's it.
The connection is they're not Israel. The connection is they're all in the middle. They're not you. The connection is they've all been targeted by you. The connection is they have received assaults by you. That is the connection.
Yeah. I know. Poor victim Israel. Oh, they just have been humiliated and oppressed and occupied for 57 long years. 5.5 million Muslims, and they're outraged to find out that other Muslims might not love that idea.
There you go.
So look, guys, Piers, this is the most important part of this. Right now, the reason I brought up the ceasefire is you could take the ceasefire, and I guarantee you that Hezbollah stops the rocket attacks. That's because that's what they've said, our experts say, every single expert in the world says. But instead of taking the ceasefire, What Netanyahu has decided is in order to protect his own political career, and he's deeply unpopular in Israel and faces corruption charges, but if he signs a ceasefire, the right-wing radicals in his government will leave the government and Netanyahu will go to election and lose. So he's worried about his own political career. So he has decided to go to war instead. Instead of signing a peace deal, he bombed Hezbollah. Now, you could say, hey, I like that he bombed Hezbollah. You could say that Hezbollah is dirty terrorists, and you could say that everyone who ever opposed Israel is terrorists, and you could say all the things that you want to say. But the bottom line is Israel is starting a much larger regional war, and
Israel is starting on the 7th of October.
I guarantee you that Jonathan is going to come on here. You're not going to talk over me. I guarantee you Jonathan comes on here and says, America must pay for it. America must die for Israel. That's what he's going to say.
You can scream until tomorrow. You don't impress me even a millimeter. Hezbollah attacked
then we can
Israel.
both talk at the same time. Okay, let's talk at the same time.
We did
this
not
guy
attack
wants you,
Hezbollah.
America,
On the 8th
he
of
wants
October,
you to attack
we
the
were
whole
quiet
Middle
in our
East.
homes and
He wants you to
Hezbollah
attack
attacked
all
Israel.
Muslims.
That is the only thing that happens. And by the way, have you ever heard of the Radwan force? Do you know what they're designed to do? They're designed to invade into Israel and do exactly what Hamas did on October the 7th. That is the main reason why Israel cannot live with Hezbollah deployed on the border.
Gentlemen, I've got to leave it there.
You are starting a war.
Well, I think a war has been being waged actually for quite some time. And we'll see how this now plays out. But clearly,
Piers,
it has been. I think if you are a terror group who persistently fires rockets at a country, you are at war with them, right? I mean, you may not think you are, but you are.
I don't want to fight it. I don't want America to fight it, and I don't want America to pay for it. Jonathan, do you agree? You said, hey, if you're not Palestinian or Israeli, Hezbollah should have nothing to do with it. Iran, no other country should have anything to do with it. Great, then you're on your own. Don't ask for another dollar. Give us the $26 billion back. Why are you using our money to start giant wars in the Middle East? We already had one in Iraq. We hated it, don't want it, and you're demanding that we pay for Israel's war in the Middle East.
Not
no
at all.
deal.
And if you only knew, if you only had an idea of how much Israel does great for U.S. foreign policy and how much Israel serves American interest in the region, you wouldn't say what you've been saying if you really cared about America.
Okay, I've got to leave it there.
Israel does nothing for America other than take our money.
Only
taking our money, and we'll end it there. That was a heated discussion, but it's true. You get money from us. You get $3.8 billion a year from us. You get weapons from us. So stop it with the what we doing for you. All the money and supplies are coming from us. They cooked in that moment. Cenk was really good there. Candace was really good. I could tell that Cenk was going to get upset because I could see, I was like, Cenk is starting to sweat. Nothing has happened yet. He hasn't started speaking yet. So I could tell he was about to go off in just a second. But I'm going to show you right now with that ceasefire. I told you guys, this was all a part of the game. All a part of the game. All these politicians have been lying to you. So think about that when you're trying to think about who you're going to support. Jason Call just shared this. Will Kamala be any better? No. The entire Democratic Party is a trash heap. And if you're not on your way out right now, it just means you're a little piece of that heap. So he's retweeting Emma Vigilant, who said a catastrophic legacy-defining failure. Biden thought of himself as some foreign policy wonderkind from his time on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, but he's actually just cocky brute. So this just came through. U.S. officials concede Gaza ceasefire out of reach for Biden. The Biden administration is still pushing talks, but a breakthrough appears unlikely. Okay, so share this and pass this on with everyone, guys, because this is what I've been trying to tell you. They have been lying to you. They were lying all this damn time. The State Department was lying. Biden was lying. Kamala Harris is lying to you. Donald Trump actually told you to your face that he would try to protect Israel at all costs. He told you that to his face. So we're not putting him in this category because he kept it real with you. But Kamala, Biden, and John Kirby, these people have been lying to you over and over again. They were not serious about getting a ceasefire done. And the reason how you know that is because they continued to give them weapons. They continued to give them, as I told you, You cannot be serious about a ceasefire when the majority of the weapons that they are using to kill the people is coming from the United States. So if you were serious about a ceasefire, you would have agreed to an arms embargo, which Kamala Harris, by the way, never wanted to agree to. The uncommitted people, they came out and have publicly said they couldn't endorse her because she wouldn't agree to an arms embargo. Now they all over the place too, because they still told people don't vote Trump, but don't vote third party because that'll help Trump. So they all over the place. That's coming from the leaders. But if you talk to a lot of the people in the Muslim community, they're not voting for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. They plan to vote third party. There's a reason why Jill Stein has so much support from the Muslim voter community. There's a reason. I told you they've been lying to you all this time. You guys realize it's September 20th. We are almost at October. It will soon be October 7th again. A year of this going on. So this whole idea of we are trying to push through. What do you mean you're trying to push through? You're the one that controls the weapons. You're the one giving the weapons to them. What the F do you mean you're trying to push something when you're the one in control? But no, people wanted to tell you, let's negotiate. Let's try to push Biden left. Then they told you push Kamala left. I'm like, all you got to do is look at the donors. And that tells you where they are going to move on certain issues and how. I don't know how many times Kamala Harris had to say publicly that she would never condition arms to Israel or stop arms to Israel for people to really get it through their thick brains. I tried to tell you, but people are like, no, we want her to be the right one because she's not Donald Trump. You know what? Sometimes you got two bad choices. And sometimes when you have two bad choices, you can go outside of that. So, I mean, if I wanted a slice of pepperoni pizza and somebody showed up and gave me a slice of cheese pizza, and someone showed up and gave me a slice of sausage pizza, but I want a pepperoni pizza. Am I going to take the cheese or the sausage? Hell no. I'm going to push them to the side. I'm going to walk down the middle and I'm going to get the damn pepperoni pizza. Some of you got decisions to make. Some of you guys got to decide, do you just want to go along with what people are telling you to do because it'll make you feel better? Because you don't want to be on the outside? Or do you want to go get that damn slice of pepperoni pizza? I go for the pepperoni pizza. Let's pull up the poll whenever you're ready, Eric. I'm going to go to the comments while you do that. I done tried to tell people. And like I said, I ain't even mad at the people who didn't care about this issue. I'm mad at the people who really cared about this issue and said that genocide was a red line. And then they're just like, well, I'm going to, maybe we can push Kamala left. I'm like, you guys been watching progressive media for years and you haven't gotten it through your brain. The number of times, even like the number of times Kyle Kalinske and all these people told you over and over and over again that the money determines where they're going to be on policy. The number of time they told you that they're corrupt because they're taking the corporate money and that tells you how they're going to vote and how they're going to legislate. Some of you sat back and you listened to these guys tell you this for years, but the moment they decided to do what they can do to build their brand and say, well, let's just forget everything I told you and let's get on board for Kamala Harris, everybody just followed like sheep. And I'm asking you to use your brain. Let's pull up the poll. And I know it's not all of you guys. I know it's not all of you, but it's crazy to me how people can't hold the line for genocide. Damn. Okay. Thank you for the poll. Does Oprah help or hurt Kamala's campaign? 2,728 votes. 14% of you said Oprah helps her campaign. 30% of you said Oprah hurts her campaign. 32% said Oprah doesn't affect it. And 24% of you said, I have no idea. Well, that's interesting. Interesting. I don't know. Some people love them some Oprah. Love them some Oprah. Did someone say pizza goat? Pizza goat. I'm particular about my pizza, so I had to use that as a reference. We are going to finish the California ballot measures for November, and then we will head on out of here, folks. So I think we're moving into rent control. Yeah, there's a rent control measure for California. Let me get to Let's make sure I caught up to where I was last time. Okay, yeah. Last time we finished with the $18 minimum wage. So that'll be on the ballot. We covered that one. And now we're going to rent control. So if you live in California, listen up, fam. This is Proposition 33. Prohibit state limitations on local rent control initiative. A yes vote supports repealing the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act of 1995, thereby allowing cities and counties to limit rent on any housing and limit the rent for first-time tenants, and adding language to state law to prohibit the state from limiting the right of any city, county, or city and county to maintain, enact, or expand residential rent control. Interesting. So how would this change state power over local rent control? So we already covered this here. This is like a repeat. I don't know why they repeat this sometimes, but they do. But it does say here, it says that this does not prohibit laws related to renters, such as the existing statewide limit on rent increases. So this is going to be on the ballot this November for California. And who supported this? Bernie Sanders, Tony Strickland, California Democratic Party, the Nurses Association. One of the organizations is Housing is a Human Right, supports this. And here's one of the arguments. Statewide rent control is a ludicrous idea, but the measure's language goes further. It gives local governments ironclad protections from the state housing policy and therefore overreaching enforcement. It's always interesting to me how people will just throw out that word ludicrous, like just because. Luda! All right. Californians for Responsible Housing. This is sponsored by the California Apartment Association, and No on 3 are leading the campaign in opposition to the initiative. So who is opposed? So it's Democrats versus Democrats, FYI. Tony Atkins and Buffy Wicks, who are both Democrats, oppose it. The Republican Party of California oppose it. So now see how you got Democrats joining with the Republican Party to oppose it? Unions, the United Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners of America opposes this. And one of the organizations that oppose it is California Apartment Association. That's interesting. Here's one of the arguments. It says, on paper, it would be legal to build new homes, but it would be illegal, largely speaking, to make money doing so. So here we go with the housing situation again, right? And I want to show you how much money has been spent for this measure, because this usually can give you an idea whether or not it's going to pass or not. So it appears there's been over 13.3 million spent to support this measure and over 2.2 million to oppose this measure. So that's interesting. We'll see if that passes in California. I know housing is a big issue in Cali. Quick note here from Roger, who helps me with these. He said, seeing who it is for and who it's against tells me everything I need to know. In California, approved measures take effect on the 5th day after the Secretary of State certifies election results, unless a different effective date is specified by the measure. Let's hope it gets approved, because seeing what the governor is doing, clear out them homeless in camps, it couldn't come at a sooner time. Hopefully, maybe this will stop the mass exodus. Yeah, you guys know there's a big housing problem in California. I mean, across the country, housing is an issue, but in California, it is probably, I think California has the largest homeless population. So big problem there. Let's see if that passes. Here's another one with healthcare. Proposition 34 requires certain participants in Medi-Cal RX program to spend 98% of revenues on patient care initiative. A yes vote supports requiring healthcare providers that spent over $100 million in any 10-year period on anything other than direct patient care and operated multifamily housing with over 500 high severity health and safety violations to spend 98% of revenues from the federal discount prescription drug program on direct patient care. It also penalizes violators of the initiative with loss of tax exempt status and licenses to operate health insurance plans, pharmacies, and clinics, and permanently authorizing Medi-Cal RX in state law. Interesting. So what would Proposition 34 do? And it's interesting here, it says it would establish a new category of entities called prescription drug price manipulators. If an entity is classified as a prescription drug price manipulator, the entity would have to meet the following requirements annually to maintain its tax exempt status and licensure as health insurance plans, pharmacies, and clinics. Spend at least 98% of revenues from federal discount prescription drug program on direct patient care and not engage in unprofessional conduct or conduct contrary to public health, welfare, or safety. So interesting. It says Gavin Newsom first established the Medi-Cal RX program in January of 2019 via executive order. So again, it goes to show you things that the governor can do via executive order. All right. So, and I want to jump forward here. So it says Protect Patients Now is sponsored by California Apartment Association and is leading the campaign in support of the initiative. Who supports this? State Assembly Member Evan Lowe. So we're seeing some bipartisanship here. The Republican Party of California supports it, and so does Democrat Assembly Member Evan Lowe. Interesting. Organizations, ALS Association and San Francisco Women's Cancer Network. And here's one of the arguments. The Protect Patients Now Act will force the worst abusers of the drug discount program, like Weinstein's AIDS Healthcare Foundation, back to the program's original mission to provide healthcare to low-income patients. This measure focuses only on the program's worst offenders, putting in place new accountability measures to ensure they are appropriately using taxpayer dollars. The act requires the program's worst offenders like AHF and any others like it to spend 98% of their taxpayer generated revenues on direct patient care. It also prevents them from overcharging government agencies for prescription drugs. So long as these worst offenders meet these requirements, they can continue their healthcare operations. Interesting. Who is opposing this? The AIDS Healthcare Foundation. Housing as a Human Right opposes it. And one of the arguments here, I want to read the one from Consumer Watchdog. The proposed initiative is poorly veiled attempt by California Apartment Association to silence a political adversary. If it is allowed to be put to the voters, no organization in the future will be safe from similar retribution by moneyed opponents. Let's see how much money is being spent to support or oppose. Over 11.7 million is spent to support this measure, and there's no money spent to oppose it. So I think you can kind of imagine where this is going to go. And what I mean by that, it means if they have more money to support or oppose, whichever has the most money, that means they can run more ads. They can, have more mailers go out to residents. So that's why I say usually whichever has the most money is usually the way that it goes. And I've talked about the Cali Medi-Cal RX program on here before, but I think this is important. It talks about what Gavin Newsom did. In 2019, he signed an executive order requiring the California Department of Health Care Services to transition Medi-Cal pharmacy services to managed care to fee for service. Managed care means the state pays a fee to a managed care plan for each enrollee, and the plan pays providers for the Medi-Cal services needed by the beneficiary included in the plan's contract. Fee for service means the state pays providers directly for Medi-Cal services needed by the beneficiary. DHCS had to request federal approval to transition from managed care to fee for service. The full transition took effect on January 1st, 2022. Here's a little note here from Roger. Seeing this makes me say this looks extremely complicated and just glazes over my eyes and makes me say just do CalCare, aka single payer universal health care, to make it easier. If Protect Patients Now and AIDS Healthcare Foundation can get this on the ballot, then they have the ability to get CalCare on the ballot. So it makes me wonder what is really going on. I get the feeling these orgs have turned to gatekeepers. So when it came to CalCare, they actually had the votes to, vote for that in the state legislature. But the problem was the big money. I don't know if Roger knows this, but big money interests, big pharma companies contacted them and said, don't bring it for a vote. But they had the votes to approve CalCare in California. And that would have been huge in this country. It would have been the first state to pass something like that, to pass single payer. But big pharma intervened. That's what happened with CalCare. Here's another one here, Proposition 35, Managed Care Organization Tax Authorization Initiative. Another one for healthcare. A yes vote supports permanently authorizing a tax on managed care organizations based on monthly enrollees, which is set to expire in 2026, and requiring revenues to be used to increase Medi-Cal programs. So these two are somewhat connected. Because I want to go through all this again, but because like I said, they're connected. But for this one, who is supporting it? Both parties, California Democratic Party and the Republican Party of California. The SEIU California State Council. Which organization? California Dental, Hospital, Medical, Primary Care Association, Planned Parenthood affiliates of California. And one of the arguments here, it is important to ensure that Californians have access to health care, which is exactly what this ballot measure will help ensure. This measure will help Planned Parenthood health centers and other community health centers invest in the workforce, expand services, and ultimately be able to serve more parents. Funding for Medi-Cal is critical for the millions of Californians who rely on the program for essential reproductive health care. So how much money is spent? $11.7 million to support. No money spent to oppose this measure. And yeah. So again, same note here from Roger. This would be so much simpler if they just had CalCare. Again, I told you, another example of putting a Band-Aid on something instead of healing the wound. Like, to me, it's ridiculous. Peep this one, fam. Proposition 36, Drug and Theft Crime Penalties and Treatment Mandated Felonies Initiative. Hold on to your seat for this one. A yes vote supports making changes to Proposition 47 approved in 2014, including classifying certain drug offenses as treatment mandated felonies, increasing penalties for certain drug crimes by increasing sentence length and level of crime, requiring courts to warn individuals convicted of distributing illegal drugs of their potential future criminal liability if they distribute deadly drugs like fentanyl, heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, and increasing sentences for theft based on the value of the property that is stolen. Okay, so this one's interesting. Who supports this? Vince Fong, he's a Republican. San Francisco Mayor London Breed We have San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria, San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan. So we have nonpartisan, then we have Republican. One of the candidates that supports it is George Whitesides. He's a Democrat running for U.S. House. Political parties, Republican Party of California. So again, we're seeing some more bipartisanship, and Target, Walgreens, and Walmart support it. And unions, California Police Chief, State Sheriff's Association, and one of the organizations, California Business Roundtable. Now, here's one of the arguments, and this is from San Francisco Mayor London Breed. The Homelessness, Drug Addiction, and Theft Reduction Act will make targeted but impactful changes to our laws around fentanyl and help us tackle the chronic retail theft that hurts our retailers, our workers, and our cities. I fully support this measure, and I know it will make a meaningful difference for cities across California. Interesting. Who opposes it? California Democratic Party. And Anti-Decivism Coalition in California. Here's their argument. Prop 36 would reverse the state's gains in reducing the dangerous, racially unequal, and unconstitutionally crowded prison population. Second, it would dry up funding for much needed services, including employment assistance for those coming out of jail, victim services, and housing. Finally, it risks making California less safe, as programs funded by Proposition 47 have reduced recidivism without increasing violent crime. There's $7.1 million spent to support this, 0 to oppose. Again, I look at all the money that's spent to support or oppose these ballot measures, and I think to myself, like, what if they took all that money and put that money into communities and build up those communities? Something to think about, right? So there's that as well. And here's a note here from Roger. It looks like the 1980s is trying to make a comeback in California. You got the California Correctional Peace Officers Association, Truth in American Government, contributing to this. Be easy, that dude. You see, this is why you don't vote the couch. See what they are trying to sneak past you guys when you're not looking. Vote the initiative, especially this one. This is targeting us. Feel free to leave everything else blank, but tell your boys, tell everybody in your neighborhood, tell the state. Look how much money Walmart and Home Depot put into this. I know it has to do with the theft, but they're reacting. They don't know what else to do. I understand, but this isn't the way to do it. And this is something I will always say to people as well. Again, always support the ballot measures. It's incredibly important that you do, because I'm seeing them like these states are kind of sneaky, and sometimes they'll implement a ballot measure during a special election when most people do not participate, and they'll just sneak things by you that you may not even be paying attention to. So it's important that we are paying attention to these ballot measures. That's why, I cover them on this show, so you know what's going to be on the ballot in November, because they'll try to sneak anything. And Roger's right. They're reacting, So, yeah. Okay. Let me go to the super chats here. Thank you, Mullian. Israel is killing Americans while Americans supply them money. Israel is making money from ground zero, though they're behind September making Lucky Larry $4 control demo. Okay. I don't know about that. I have to look into that. But shout out to Yvonne Campbell for becoming a new member. Give Yvonne a big whoop whoop. Thank you, Colton. The Israeli guy is wrong because he interrupts. Thank you, New York Varsity. Israel is not our ally. We are theirs. We are the only thing stopping them from getting murked. Right. Thank you, MT Derwin. Deep Dish Pizza 2024. Are you in Chicago? Thank you, Cynical. Is there a playlist of each state ballot initiative based on year? It would be great reference point, something we could keep coming back to. Yes. In fact, I'll show you where it's at. That's a good question there, Mr. Guy. Yeah, so if you go to my channel, I'll show you here. So what I have, so let's go in order. The current one right now, the 2024 ballot measures I'm doing is actually on the homepage. It's right here after on the ground coverage, and it's called 2024 ballot initiatives. So Alabama and Alaska is already there. California will be there this weekend. And so we're just putting them all there. And then if you want to see previous ones, if you go down here, ballot measure results for 2022 and 2023. So like all of them are there. So you'll be able to see them for those states. And I believe that's how I did that. And I believe, didn't I make let me see if I made a playlist about this. Yeah. So I have a playlist too. 2024 ballot initiatives and ballot measure results 2022 and 2023. So for 2022 and 2023, I didn't do this. I wasn't able to do this before they were going to be on the ballot. So I covered it and I told you if it passed or not. And for this one, I'm telling you what's going to be on the ballot. So yeah, good question. Good question, Cynical. Thank you. And thank you, P. Burley. Doesn't Israel have free healthcare and education courtesy of American foreign policy, but we don't? Not sure, just asking. There you go. Yes, indeed. I'm telling you, but they keep telling us what we can't have. They keep telling us like, how are we going to pay for it? That's what they keep saying. Thank you, Mary Rose. Sabby Big Ass. Can you cover each state ballot measure coming up? Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Yeah. So we just finished California. The next one will be Colorado. So we're going through all of them. And then what I also want to do is I want to make little shorts, little YouTube shorts where I just list off like the big ones that are going to be on there. So like if I did a short for California, I would say, guess what's on the ballot for California? $18 minimum wage. I'll just name like the really big ones for people and post it as a YouTube short. And then at the bottom where it says to click to see the full video, you'll be able to link it to the full video. So yeah. Yeah. And that is it for me, guys. I am heading out. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Don't forget to hit the like if you didn't. If you're new and you like what you saw, don't forget to subscribe. And I will be back Tuesday evening, ladies and gentlemen. So I will see you then. Have a good night. Oh, thank you for this one too. They are increasing the homelessness. They are trying to get us incarcerated after all the incarcerated are to be enslaved. The enslaved are free labor. Yeah, and that's another ballot measure that I think people should push in California is to outlaw that, to outlaw prison labor. That was another thing that Kamala Harris did, by the way. That's why the prison system was so crowded in California that the judge had to tell her they had too many people of the overcrowding because she wanted that she was getting the free labor from the prisoners. Yeah. I don't see anybody asking Kamala questions about that. All right, guys. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.